Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Municipal Council's Committee of the Whole meeting of Tuesday, May 14th, 2019. Everybody, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Coyle.
Here.
Councilmember Deal.
Here.
Councilmember Gomez.
Here.
Councilmember Joshi.
Present.
Councilmember Lombardi.
Here.
Councilmember Patil.
Here.
Councilmember Sandelsky.
Here.
Adequate notice, please.
Adequate notice of this meeting as required by the Open Public Meeting Act of 1975 has been provided by a special notice published in the Home News Tribune and the News India Times on April 25th, 2019, and posted Main Lobby Municipal Complex on that same date.
Great. I want to note that we have our attorneys with us, Christopher Malik-Schmidt and Andrew Dressel, joining us here at the dais. Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming out to the council chambers for our first meeting of the Township's Council's Committee of the Whole. As many of you know, this is an investigatory meeting to investigate the racial flyer that was created and distributed during the 2017 Board of Education election. Our goal tonight is to gather more information that may ultimately lead us to those individuals who were responsible for this terrible and unacceptable act. Our expectations are that tonight we begin the investigatory process, and we intend to hold as many meetings as possible or as necessary. With that said, we will be holding another meeting on Thursday, May 23rd, here in council chambers at 7 p.m., and another one is being planned for June. Moving forward, we stand united as a council to send a message that anyone who engages in this form of racial bigotry will not be tolerated, and we will not stand silent. It is important that as we begin, we understand that these meetings will be conducted with the level of decorum that our residents and this council deserves. I ask that everyone please put their cell phones on silent and respect the individuals who will be speaking tonight. At this time, I would like to ask Mayor Lanke to issue a statement regarding these proceedings.
Doesn't matter what chair I sit.
Yours.
I want to make sure I follow the rules.
Yes.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, council members. I just want to applaud you in forming this committee. Very important, as Council President said, this is not acceptable. It's deplorable, disgraceful. I mean, the flyer in front of you, I think we're all aware of, about 1.5 years ago now, since that came out. And I know there's been a lot of investigations going on, both our police department, the prosecutor's office, the Postal General, and it goes on. But I applaud you in establishing this committee because we need to make sure that we get to the bottom of this. This is not acceptable. This is probably why we don't see more people run for political office. This is why I think our turnout is as low as it is, because this is something that just cannot be tolerated. You know, Edison prides itself in its diversity. And obviously, this is not pro-diversity by any means. You know, we just need to make sure we get to the bottom of this. You know, it's been discussed, you know, whether or not this is unlawful, whether it's against any election laws. It doesn't matter, because this is just humanly not tolerable and not morally appropriate. So, you know, I applaud you again with what you're doing. I just urge you to please try to, you know, do so with diligence. Let's try to leave politics out of it, which I know is difficult at times, especially during this season. But we're here, and you're here, really, to get to the bottom of this and hold accountable whoever did this deplorable act. And again, I just want to thank you and applaud you again for undertaking this serious situation. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. I would now like to turn to my council colleague, Councilman Michael Lombardi, to provide some more information on our meeting tonight.
Thank you, Council President. And I'd also like to thank everybody that came out tonight. Tonight we are holding our first Committee of the Whole proceeding. There are several individuals that were asked to voluntarily come in and provide testimony as to what, if any, knowledge they possess regarding the racial flyer that was distributed in November of 2017. I'm going to go over some instructions for our witnesses, so I ask that each witness here tonight listen carefully to the instructions. This will be a question and answer session. There's a court reporter present, and the committee's questions and your answers to those questions will be taken down by the court reporter. At some point in time, the court reporter will prepare a booklet called a transcript. That transcript will have an exact verbatim record of all of the questions and your answers to those questions. The court reporter, when you come up, will ask you for your name and address. The court reporter will then swear you in. So although you're in council chambers tonight, your answers are still considered sworn testimony and have the same effect as if you were testifying tonight in court. So it's important that you approach this proceeding with the same degree of seriousness as you would if you were in front of a judge and a jury. There are certain rules that should be followed. First, listen to the question. If you don't hear or understand the question by the committee member, let them know, and I'm sure that committee member will repeat or rephrase the question until you're satisfied that you both heard and understood the question. Nobody here wants you to start to answer the question if you're not sure what the question was. We want to know what you know as well as what you do not know. So if you were asked a question and you truly have no idea what the answer is, you should say so. Nobody here wants you to guess or make up an answer if you don't know. However, there's a difference between a guess and a reasonable estimate or an approximation. So if you were asked a question, let's say about a date or a time, and you can't give an exact answer, but you can give a reasonable estimate, we would ask that you do that. Just identify your answer as a reasonable estimate or an approximation so you're not held to an exact answer. If at any time you feel that you were cut off and weren't permitted to complete your answer to that question, just signal to us and we'll stop and allow you to complete your answer to that question. Finally, we should all avoid using slang. If your answer is yes, say yes. If it's no, say no, as opposed to a shrug of the shoulders or a movement of the head. This is for the benefit of the court reporter and so that we have a clear record. And I would also ask the committee members asking the questions that if a witness responds with an or an or the shrug of the shoulders, that they confirm whether that answer was a yes, a no, or something else. So that's how we would like to proceed tonight. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, sir. For purpose of efficiency, I would ask that the committee first lead in the questioning with the attorneys, and then if there are any new questions above and beyond that from the other council members, including myself, we should do so afterwards. And again, questions and discussions should be specific to this matter only pertaining to the flyer. Thank you. We are moving on to call our first witness, Mr. Paul DiStefano.
Paul DiStefano, 60 Buchanan Road, Edison.
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. DiStefano, were you present when we went over the initial instructions?
Yes.
Okay, did you hear and understand all the instructions?
Yes.
Do you need me to repeat any or all of the instructions before we begin?
No.
Do you have any questions about the instructions before we begin?
No.
Okay. Mr. DiStefano, what was your role in the 2017 Board of Education election in Edison? And who else was a part of that ticket? How did you become a part of that ticket? And what generally made decisions? What were the general questions what were the general reasons as to why you became a candidate for Board of Education?
Okay.
Mr. DiStefano, can you hold 1 second, please? I believe the court
Yes.
reporter is going to swear you.
We did.
I missed that part. Thank you.
Okay. Before the election, in April, I believe, 2017, there was a vacancy on the Board of Ed, and one of the prior members had passed away, Debbie Ains. Debbie was a friend of mine, and I had been involved with the schools, mainly the high schools, J.P. Stevens, with sports and other activities and the parent groups and things. So When the vacancy came up and the board was looking for a new board member, I submitted an application. So I was appointed. The board voted. There were 6 people who put their name in the hat. I was selected in, I believe it was April of 2017, to fill the vacancy. I then had to run for re-election in the fall to continue Debbie's unexpired seat. So Jerry Shee had asked me to run with him, and Beth Maroney was also up for re-election from the board, and Jerry had met and invited Falguni Patel to be part of our ticket.
Did you know her ahead of time?
No.
Okay.
No. The 4 of us were part of this. We were this ticket. We had support from several people in the community. I was new to politics. I'd never run for any type of office before. All of my positions in the past were all volunteer, and you know, there's no election to be the president of a parents group. It's whoever wants to do the work is pretty much the one who gets the seat. So that was the extent of my experience with being on a board. I thought the Board of Ed wasn't supposed to be political, but as time went on, I learned that it is a political process. There's, you know, with the elections and everything else, it really is a political position, unfortunately. Jerry was handling he was kind of the head of our ticket, and he handled pretty much everything, as from getting us assistance to the money to you know, booking events and going out and speaking to people and things like that. There was a group of people who were the core that supported our ticket. Those people included Councilman Patil, the special assistant to the mayor, Mahesh Bagia, his brother Raj Bagia, a committee person, attorney Satish Pundi, and the Democratic chairman Sharik. I don't recall his last name right now, but I think you know who I mean.
Okay.
So we went to a lot of events at the convention center. You know, Jerry felt it was very important for us to get out to the Indian and the Asian and the, you know, Chinese community. It was also important that I introduced him to what he called the, you know, the white community, the South. It was important that I walked with him in South Edison to introduce him to the people that I knew through sports and you know, just being a Caucasian, he needed me for the vote.
Do you believe that was part of the reason as to why you were picked on the ticket?
No. Jerry and I were close. He was one of the, you know, he was one of the 5, I believe it was 5, that voted for me to get on the board originally. Jerry and I were very close throughout much of that year and leading up into the campaign. And you know, things kind of changed when it got real political.
So what happened? What do you mean by get political? What was it like during your time throughout the election itself? You ran with these individuals.
Yeah. I was pretty much Jerry's, you know, number 2 guy on the ticket. I mean, he and I spent a lot of time together. He confided in me a lot. There were times when, the other person who supported us was Shannon Peng. She was also a board member. She was probably the most active member of our team as far as going out and ringing doorbells and meeting people and putting things together for us.
Okay.
Yeah, Jerry and I were very close. A couple things. He was very driven to win. At one point during the campaign, he had arrangements to go to Australia. I think it was Australia, with his wife for 2 weeks. He canceled last minute, and she went by herself so that he could continue to campaign, because he didn't want to, he figured if there was, in that 2-week period, however many people he could speak to, that would assure extra votes for him and our team. There was another night, his brother was in town for one night on his way back to China for cancer treatments. And his brother was at his house, and we were at an event at the convention center. And he told me his brother was there, and he was supposed to go meet him, but he had to keep campaigning. And he didn't go see his brother before he went back to, and that kind of made me wonder, how important this was. And it just, it started me thinking. I don't know if it was that night, the same night that he didn't go see his brother, and then we went to the convention center a lot for these events. So I don't know if it was the same night as the brother or another night, but on October 7th, he invited me to this. We had been to the convention center, meet and greet, and there was a big event. I forget what it was. It's like a lot of dancing and
The
so
Expo
forth.
Convention Center. Okay.
Yes. Whatever event they had on the night of October 7th.
Okay.
And then we went out for coffee afterwards. It was Jerry and I and Shannon, and I believe Shivy was there. After we went for coffee, and we were going to break up and go home, it was late. It was probably 11 o'clock or so in the evening, maybe later. Jerry invited me to come to this special meeting, a planning meeting, he said. And Shannon didn't like that idea.
Who was a part of this meeting? What was it for? What was the purpose? Where was it?
So we left Dunkin' Donuts around 11:30. We drove over to near the Woodside Pool that used to be there on Harding. And from what I learned was that it was the home of Mahesh Bhagia and Raj Bhagia. And when we got there were several gentlemen there. Satish Pundi was one of them. And I walked in with Jerry and Shannon. There were several other gentlemen there that I didn't know. And throughout the night, several more came and went. They just would come in, they'd talk for a few minutes to, Satish and Raj, and then they would go.
Do you know how many people came in and out?
It may have been a half a dozen throughout I was probably there for maybe 3 hours or so.
Okay.
I left at about 2 a.m. They were still there. I was the first one to leave. But between 11:30 and 2, I would say a half a dozen different people came and went. I believe that Councilman Patil was one of the gentlemen who stopped by. It was early in the campaign, so I didn't know everyone as well as I came to know everyone later on. It was an interesting experience. When I first got there, I believe it was Raj who called Jerry into the other room. So when you walk in the house, there's like a living room to the right, and then I think there was like a dining room, and then the kitchen. So they told me to sit in the living room there, and they went towards the kitchen, and I overheard, "What is he doing here?" And I heard Jerry say, "It's okay, he's fine." And the night was pretty much, planning the campaign, talking about, meet and greets and different things. And there was also a lot of talk about the other candidates and, digging up dirt on the other candidates. They had the book that one of the other candidates had written about being a politician. I don't know if I should mention names or not, but
You can. You should.
Mr. Ruggiero, who was running for the Board of Ed, he had written a book, The Virgin Politician, about his time running for, I believe, council and governor and some other positions. And, you know, they were looking through the book for something to use in the campaign. They had a Facebook post from one of the other gentlemen that was running, the tall Indian gentleman who was running, Irani, I believe. The name is something like that.
Okay.
It was, you know, it was just a silly Facebook post from a few years prior where he, you know, he was looking for a date, and it was, you know, it was like a ridiculous frat type Facebook post, and you know they had planned on using that, but I don't think it ever came out. Shannon had her laptop there, and she was working on a flyer. She said she spent all day working on it. She showed it to all of us. And then either that night, I sent you copies of the, I sent several people copies of the text exchange between Shannon and I, and then the email she sent me the next day. It was actually brought up at one of our Board of Ed meetings as well. The flyer that she showed me, it was going to be, you know, she said it was going to be sent out to some parents, as you know, I don't remember every detail of the flyer, but it talked about, you know, protecting the Board of Ed and, you know, the unions controlling the Board of Ed and that sort of thing. And she texted me and said, "Oh, I want to send you the proof, the flyer that we're going to be sending out to some parents." And she sent it to me, and I texted back, you know, maybe I don't think we should do this. I forget the exact wording, but it's in, you know, it's in the text exchange. And then didn't hear anything about it for a couple of days, and then a few days later, I didn't receive it in the email, but one of my hockey parents received it and forwarded it to me, and it was the same flyer, you know, verbatim, same pictures, same text, and at the bottom it said, paid for by People for Progress.
So what,
Mr. DiStefano, if the court reporter could put in front of you what's been pre-marked as Exhibit D, please. Correct. If you could just take a minute to examine that, please.
Yeah, the thing that stands out is the board table with the BOA members and the union talking about the,
Council President?
Yes,
Would
sir.
it be possible to have Exhibit D up on the TV screen so that everyone can see what we're
Do we have that available?
referencing?
yes,
So just to be clear, if you've had an opportunity to take a look at what's been pre-marked Exhibit D,
yes,
and that does appear to be the document that was forwarded to you that you were referencing in your prior testimony.
yes.
And if you could take a look, I don't know how well you can see the screen.
Yeah.
But the images that are on the screen, are those the images that essentially have been lifted from that document marked as Exhibit D?
Yes.
Okay. If the reporter could actually put Exhibit E in front of the witness, I'd appreciate it, please.
Could I get a bottle of water?
yes.
Thank you.
If you could take an opportunity to review what's been pre-marked as Exhibit E, do you recognize that document?
Yes, this, I believe, was the second, it came out after this one. This was another one that was sent to me by one of our hockey parents, and I X'd out their name because they didn't want to be identified.
So that is the document you were referring to in your prior testimony?
No, this was a second email that came out that I wasn't aware of, but it appears to have been, you know, it appears to be very similar, you know, a lot of the same information from this one.
But it is the document that you were testifying about having been sent to you from a hockey parent? Appears to be.
No, this is the one, well,
Yes.
I was only talking about the first one from October 7th and a few days later. I believe this one came out They aren't the same documents,
Understood.
but both were sent to me by hockey parents. I never received them myself, other than getting the first one from Shannon.
Okay. And if you could take a look on the screen, there's some images on the screen that have been lifted from that document pre-marked Exhibit E. There, I've got it as Exhibit E now. Do those appear to be the images that have been lifted from the document that I placed in front of you?
Yes.
Thank you.
Can you go back to the previous, I want to note the dates. So October 16th and October 9th. Okay. Did you know who Andres Morales was?
No. Among the group that was helping us with our campaign, People for Progress was mentioned, and it was mentioned as a PAC. I was, like I said, at the time I was new to politics. I didn't know what a PAC was. I had to Google it. I Googled Andrew Morales and People for Progress, and I couldn't find anything on the internet. The only Andrew Morales I could find related to, I searched Andrew Morales, People for Progress. I searched Andrew Morales, New Brunswick, because I think one of the addresses on one of the flyers was New Brunswick. And the only Andrew Morales that comes up on Google is like a former football player from Rutgers. That's the only Andrew Morales that I could find.
Did you, what was your primary source of fundraising for your election?
It was primarily Jerry. A lot of events with the Chinese community and fundraisers and things like that.
Are you aware that People for Progress had donated to the Unity team?
Later on, yes. I don't know if it was October or whatever, but Jerry did mention that he received a check from People for Progress, and I believe he wrote a check to People for Progress.
Okay. What was it like when that flyer, the racist flyer, Exhibit A, had come out? What was it like to be on that team knowing that two of your candidates, your fellow colleagues, your running mates, were also, what were their reactions?
Fal was visibly upset and shaken and scared. She was afraid that she was being targeted. Jerry's reaction was different. Jerry was more nervous. He wasn't angry, or he kept talking about, his children seeing this and people finding out and that sort of thing. He wasn't, it wasn't about, how could somebody do this? It was like, what are people going to think?
Okay.
But to go back, when I first saw the racial flyer, when I didn't get a copy of it, I believe the first time I saw it was either someone sent it to me via text or I saw it on Facebook or something like that. And to be honest, the first thing I thought was, I can't believe Jerry did this. Now, just to take a step back, at that meeting that night, on October 7th, with the group that I was telling you about, they were trying to dig up all this dirt on the other candidates, and I asked, why do you need to do this? I don't understand. You have the support of your, I've been to all these events at the Chinese community, the South Asian community, everyone embraced us, and everybody, was telling us that, they supported us. And I'm like, you have the support of your communities. Why do you need to do this? And the two of them, almost in unison, or tandem, they were, we know we have the support of our community, but they don't come out and vote. We need to figure out a way to get them to come out and vote.
Which two individuals stated this?
That was Jerry and Satish.
What night was this?
That was the October 7th at the home of Mahesh and Raj Bagia.
Mr. DiStefano, you said your first initial thought was that, I can't believe Jerry did this, or something to that effect. Is that right?
Yes.
Why is it that you would think that?
Jerry was obsessed with winning, and then after that evening, when they talked about they have to figure out a way to get their people to come out and vote, that's just the first thing that popped into my mind. The other thing is that, you know, I think there were 4 other Indian candidates that were running, or 4 or 5. Why is it only the 2 of my teammates with very nice photos were the ones that were targeted on this flyer? You know, when they were, you know, when you, from what I learned, when, you know, with dirty politics, anything you see on TV or on Facebook, if they want to, you know, call somebody out or make somebody look bad, they don't find the nicest picture they can find of them. They get a picture of them with their mouth open or a fun, you know, an angry face or something. I mean, those are 2, you know, very nice photos that were taken off of their Facebook pages. It just seemed too perfect.
Did you have any role, to be clear, in creating or disseminating the flyer?
No, absolutely not.
Do you have any direct knowledge as to who did create or disseminate the flyer?
No.
Can we put Exhibit B on the screen? Mr. DeStefano, do you recognize this flyer?
Yes.
Did you approve or help create this flyer?
This one, yes. We were aware of this flyer.
And
Meaning the 3 of us, Falcone, Beth, and myself.
Councilman, if I may, stenographer, if you could place what's been pre-marked in front of the witness, pre-marked Exhibit B, please.
note that this comes from the BOE Unity team. So who typically created flyers for the Unity team?
Jerry had everything done. I know that Shannon helped him with flyers, but I don't know who created these. I know that there were several printers that Jerry worked with, but I don't know who did the, who did the photos and the typeset and put it all together. I'm not really sure.
Okay. Can you put up Exhibit C?
Stenographer, this actually has not been pre-marked. It's merely as a comparison of Exhibits A and B placed side by side for the record.
Do you see, Mr. DeStefano, do you see any similarities between these two flyers?
A little bit, I guess. Fonts and colors.
Mr. DeStefano, did you ever receive or approve the flyer that's been pre-marked as Exhibit B?
This one?
Correct.
Yes, I believe both. I don't know if I approved it before it went out, but it wasn't something that was negative. So we didn't typically see all the flyers before they went out.
But that is something you'd seen prior to this evening.
Yes, yes. I mean, there was another flyer that went out that the three of us did not approve, Falguni, Beth, and myself. And that was the one that Jerry sent out without our knowledge, where he had pictures of Mr. Hahn, Keith Hahn, and the president of the teachers union on the flyer. And he was talking about the unions taking over the school board. We didn't know about that until after it came out.
What, if anything, did you do after you found out about it?
I'm pretty sure Fal and I went to Jerry's house that day because we had to sign the filing papers. We were all pretty upset because we didn't know about this. There was no need for that flyer. It was just more dirty politics that I think Jerry knew that we would not have agreed to send it out, and that's pretty much why he did. When I questioned him, he said he was trying to get back at everybody. for what they did to me and my son. He was referring to my son resigned his position as a coach at J.P. Stevens so that I could vote on the superintendent's contract in 2017. Unfortunately, I wouldn't have been able to vote on the contract, and my vote was needed to swing, theoretically 5 votes to approve the contract versus those that wanted to, not approve it. So my son stood up, and he knew that his position as a coach would keep me from voting, and he knew that I was there to do what I, to do the right thing. And he was willing, at first he was willing to give up his pay and be a volunteer coach. And then several of the board members didn't like that. So they went to the state teachers union, filed papers with the township, filed an Open Public Records Act request on any information the district had on my son. And at that point, he then gave up his volunteer position because they said as a volunteer, he's still under the direction of the superintendent, and he had to give up his position so that I could vote my conscience.
Mr. DeStefano, just want to get back to the similarities between this flyer. When I looked at it, apart from the color and the font, do you see any similarity between the stamp on both of these flyers? Because that, to me, that was the first thing I noticed.
What do you mean stamp?
The re-elected.
Oh, I didn't even notice that, the re-elect and deport. Yeah, I never picked up on that.
Because that's not a common font at all. We've spoken to many individuals, graphic designers, and that's not a common font to just rip off and use. Do you see the similarities now?
Yes, absolutely. And that's a great picture of Fal. If I was trying to make her look bad, that wouldn't be the picture I would pick.
Returning back to the People for Progress,
Yes.
You testified that you don't know who Andres Morales is that correct?
No.
If the stenographer could place in front of the witness what's been pre-marked as Exhibit F, please. Have you had an opportunity, sir, have you had an opportunity to review what's been placed in front of you?
Yes, yes.
Do you recognize either of those checks?
No.
Would you tell us who those checks purport to be made out from?
Andrew Morales, treasurer with an address.
And it's handwritten, is that correct?
Yes.
And that does seem a bit odd.
Yes.
The first one's made out to Maxit Mailing and Fulfillment Incorporated, is that correct?
Yes.
Do you know who that is?
No, but I think both of these checks have the same check number, so I think it's the same check.
That would be correct. With regard to, but you don't recognize anything about these checks or the names, nothing about this jogs your memory?
No, I Maxit Mailing, and in the memo it says political mailing, but no, I'm not familiar with Maxit Mailing.
Just to put this into perspective, Mr. DeStefano, your campaign had taken, the Unity team had taken donations from People for Progress. The treasurer was Andres Morales.
I believe
There were
so, yes.
checks in the thousands coming in from this, and it was also sent out. Checks in the thousands were coming into the Unity team from this anonymous group, People for Progress.
Okay.
The only tie that you have stated is that Shannon was connected to People for Progress through your email.
Yeah, I wasn't
Okay.
aware that it was thousands, to be
Okay.
honest. That's the first I'm hearing
Okay.
of it. But, yeah, I mean, there was talk about this PAC and Andrew Morales, but there were no real details. Like everything else, it was kind of, in passing or...
So there's a treasurer for a political action committee accepting and making donations in the thousands from the Unity team. Handwriting on the top left corner, you can see it was handwritten. This anonymous person that you've never seen.
Right, yes.
Okay.
Stenographer, if you could place in front of the witness what's been pre-marked as Exhibit G. Exhibit G is a multi-page document, one of those pages of which has been placed on the projector. Do you recognize this document at all, sir?
Yes. Yeah,
What
this is one of the filings that we all signed. Jerry filled them in, and we met every so often, every month, every 6 weeks or so, and signed them.
Who else signed this document?
Everyone on the team, so to be Jerry, Beth, Fal, and myself.
I could direct your attention to the third page of the document, Schedule 1D, Disbursements.
Yes.
Do you see on that page, there's two different disbursements at the top, on November 2nd, 2017, to A to Z Signs in an amount of $36.68.
Yes.
And the third line down on November 9th, 2017, to PNGNY. Purpose also for printing, both of the purposes are for printing. And the full amount there is $275. Do you see, $675, do you see that?
Yes.
Do you, are you aware of either of those charges?
I probably saw them when I signed it. A to Z Signs, I believe, was one of our, one of the people who came to a lot of our events, if I'm not mistaken.
Who's the name of the individual behind that?
I don't remember the name, I'm sorry, but from what I remember, I believe he was the president of the Indian Business Association.
Okay.
If I'm not, I believe so.
Okay.
But sitting here today, you're not sure what either of these disbursements were for specifically?
No. We sent a lot of flyers. Jerry thought that was the best way to reach people. And, yeah, we spent a lot of money on flyers.
And with regard to PNGNY, do you know anything about that particular corporation, I assume?
PNGNY.
What was that, sir?
No, I was just reading the letters to myself, but no, it doesn't ring a bell.
It appears to be out of Tennessee, does it not?
Yes.
If the stenographer could place in front of the witness what's been pre-marked as Exhibit F, please. Sorry, H, Exhibit H.
Okay.
Do you recognize this document at all?
No.
Can you, this document, if I can direct your attention to the, is it fair to say this, the document, the title, Supplemental Expenditure Information Form E3?
Yes.
And it says the full committee name is People for Progress, is that correct?
Yes.
And it has expenditure information on it, is that correct?
Yes.
And it has two separate payees. One is PNGNY out of Knoxville, Tennessee, and one is A to Z Signs out of Edison, New Jersey. Is that correct?
Yes.
And these would be the same entities as we discussed previously with regard to the Team Unity filing form as well.
I would say so, yes.
Thank you.
Were you surprised to see the printer from People for Progress? So, I mean, it's interesting because there's two different printers that were used. One locally and one out of Tennessee, which is using an acronym. Did you, when you were signing off on this, did you not question who was running the show here? Or what was being printed?
No, we just assumed, we were told that there were, between the lawn signs and the mailers, and I even had business cards made that I ordered from out of state. I don't remember if Jerry paid for them or if I paid for them and he reimbursed me. It's probably in one of these filings somewhere. That was only a couple $100, but I knew that the A to Z Signs was doing printing, and I really didn't think about, if I even noticed that there was an out-of-state printer being used. I didn't think about it, didn't question it.
You didn't question that these expenditures from People for Progress, that the names on the printers are the same as your filing?
Well, this is the first time I'm seeing this other document, H, Exhibit H.
Okay.
So, had I seen something like this during the campaign, it probably would have, threw up a red flag. But, in hindsight, it's definitely appears to be a problem.
And to be clear for our audience, would you read the name on the signatory line of that document?
Andres Morales.
Thank you.
When that email went out with Shannon as well as People for Progress, the one that is nearly identical, did you not question who People for Progress was?
Yeah, I was told it was just a political action committee or group, and that, it was nothing to worry about. But later on, we, from speaking to people, concerned people, I think from seeing Keith Hahn's Facebook, his Facebook Live events, when he showed the flyers and talked about People for Progress, that's when we all started taking notice.
Once you were elected and you got onto the Board of Education, did this not come up at any point amongst your members? Did anyone bring it to your attention at the Board of Education meetings?
Yes. Yeah. I think Mr. Brescher brought it up several times. Okay. And, they tried to, to say that it was the mayor or the mayor's people. And, I mean, I'm pretty sure, based on conversations with that group that I was a part of, that that wasn't the case. Anytime I asked about the mayor's involvement, I was told that, he didn't want to be involved in the Board of Ed election. He wanted to be hands-off. He wanted to keep politics out of the Board of Ed. And then, when there was a lot of back and forth between Mr. Hahn and the mayor, I always questioned, why didn't the mayor fight back or respond to, what was going on? And I was told he didn't want to get dirty. He didn't want to do any dirty, nonsense. He didn't want to be slinging any mud. He just wanted to run a clean campaign and just ignore that type of stuff. So People for Progress, I just thought was somehow, some political group that supported different causes. And it wasn't until later on when, things started building that we started to learn that it wasn't a legal entity.
Council President, is it just for a point of order? When do we have a chance to question on the answers?
When the subcommittee, as I mentioned at the beginning, so when the subcommittee and the attorneys finish asking their questions.
After Councilman Joshi is finished? This is
after the
entire?
subcommittee, which is Councilman Joshi, Councilman
Okay.
Deal, and Councilman Lombardi.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll try to wrap this up. Just want to understand, who was responsible for your unity team in terms of racking up the votes? You had an active vote by mail effort. Who was responsible, or what set of votes were you expected to bring? What set of votes was Beth or Falguni or Jerry expected to bring?
Yeah, I mean, mine was the Caucasian vote, then the sports vote, because I was involved with hockey, soccer, and lacrosse. A foul was going to be, the Indian vote and the South Asian vote. Beth, Jerry mentioned that she would, the Jewish vote and the teachers. And, Jerry was the Chinese community.
Okay. Come time prior to this election, prior to this flyer coming out, did you do any poll? Do you know where you stood on the election? Did you think that you were going to win? Who was expected to win in terms of polling or perception from your campaign?
I don't know. I mean, it's, I just assumed that because, Jerry had the support of the Chinese community and FAL, that they were shoo-ins. I wasn't sure about...
Did they feel that way?
No, they didn't.
Were you confident that you were going to win, or
Me?
Were you optimistic?
No. I felt Beth had a good shot because she, she had been a teacher and an administrator, and she had been on the board forever. And, if you watch those meetings, Beth was the face of the Board of Ed. She was the one who was out there at the events and with the kids and doing all the, volunteering. I was up against Arugio, who had run, I believe he had run for the Board of Ed before. I believe he was on the zoning board at the time. He, from what I understood, he had a lot of, he had run for governor and mayor and council, I believe. He had run for a bunch of different positions. So I just assumed that he had, a big following and a big support base. So I was nervous about losing to Arugio because it was just the two of us for the one-year term. Everyone else was in the pool for the three-year term. So it was just, I was just head-to-head with Mr. Arugio.
Okay. And I guess my last question would be, what group or individuals would you believe would be responsible for the mailing lists or the core part of your team that you implied that this was done within? What individuals would you say were responsible for this?
Like the mailing labels and things?
Correct.
I believe, but Jerry, Jerry was in charge of everything, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of that came from Mahesh. Mahesh was involved in the campaign very heavily, so I just assumed that type of thing, lists of addresses, and I think there were lists of Democratic voters and Republican voters and who voted in how many elections and so forth. So those lists I just assumed came from the politically connected people who were helping us.
Okay. I don't have any questions.
Okay. Council President?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, Paul. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Paul, I'm interested especially in the two flyers. This one here, would you say when the Unity team, that's the team, right? The Unity team?
Yes.
When the Unity team sent this out, who do you think received it? Do you know how many copies something like this, and how many, or where would it go?
No.
Okay. How about this flyer here, do you have any idea of how many people would receive this?
No, no, I don't know anyone who received it.
Okay. You're saying, from what I could understand, the person responsible for the design of this flyer was who?
I'm not exactly sure. I know
Okay.
there were multiple printers involved, and I don't know who created this flyer.
Okay.
But I know that Shannon was involved in the graphics on these other ones.
Okay, because the font on this is exactly the font on this. Do you believe that the same printer printed these two flyers?
I believe so.
Thank you, sir.
Council President?
Yes, sir.
Just have a couple follow-up questions. Mr. DeStefano, thank you again for coming in tonight. Did the Unity team at any time before the November 2017 or after the November 2017 election hire an attorney?
Yes. Yes.
And do you know when this attorney was hired?
Jerry hired the attorney shortly after the president of the teachers union filed a lawsuit against us because of the flyer that Jerry sent out without our knowledge.
Okay, and that was, which flyer was that?
It's not here. I don't know if you have a copy of it.
Is that the flyer that you mentioned with Mr. Hahn and the Board of Education
President.
president?
Yes.
Okay. And did you or Mrs. Maroney or any other member of the Unity team have to authorize the hiring of that attorney?
We discussed it. Yes, we discussed it, but Jerry had this attorney, and he said he wanted to use them. He admitted to us that it was his fault and that we weren't responsible for the flyer and that he was going to take full responsibility for the lawsuit. And he said that he would, take care of the attorney's fees and that he would essentially, take ownership of that flyer and the repercussions.
Do you know if anything happened with that lawsuit?
No, I guess Mr. Bowden is his name, the president of he filed a tort, I believe, and it wasn't an actual lawsuit, it was a tort, so I guess he had a year to file a lawsuit, and so that attorney was essentially on retainer for a year, and we waited to see if a lawsuit would be filed, and it never was.
Now, your core group of voters that you were expected to bring, do you know whether any of them received the racist flyer exhibit?
No, I don't believe anyone that I know received the flyer.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Council President?
Yes, sir.
Paul, but you do believe that this flyer was sent out, according to what you just explained to us, to kind of rally a group to get out and vote?
Yes.
So this was kind of a get out and vote flyer, okay, designed to get a certain group out to vote?
I
Okay.
believe so, yes.
Okay. What group do you think it was?
I believe that that flyer was designed to get the Chinese and the Indian community to come out and vote for either our team or at least Jerry and Fal.
And according to your testimony, you believe that Jerry Shi was responsible for sending this flyer out?
I believe that he was involved. I don't know if he was the person who sent it or he knew who sent it, but I believe, yes, I believe that there's an involvement.
Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, sir.
Council President,
Yes, sir.
may I speak now?
I believe that...
Yeah, just one last question, sorry. Did you find it to be a coincidence that even the 3 examples of that flyer that we have right now happen to have gone to either Indian or Chinese households?
Yeah, I think that kind of,
If you were responsible for this flyer, would you send that flyer to Chinese or Indian people?
No, if they wanted to, if that flyer was designed to rile up people against the Indian and the Chinese community, it would have been sent to my voters, not theirs.
Okay.
Is that all we have from the committee?
Yes.
Yes.
Councilman Coyle.
Thank you, Council President. Well, first, thank you, everyone, for coming out. Mr. Stefano, thank you for taking the time to give testimony, and that was certainly a pretty long hour for you. I just, again, it's certainly my point to get to the bottom of this, and I'm hard on specifics. I mean, I came into this, close to 2 years ago, and I had one story, and then the story has switched into multiple directions. And I just want to find out the specifics here. Did you ever receive a copy of the racist flyer?
No.
Okay. Do you have any specific knowledge of who sent it?
Evidence or proof, no.
An email?
Just my opinion.
Any type, just your opinion, okay. Do you have any specific knowledge of whether People for Progress created and distributed the Make Edison Great Again flyer?
Not that I know of, no.
Okay. In 2017, were you endorsed by Mayor Tom Lanky?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to reference to the point you mentioned that Mr. Lanky had nothing to do with and had no part of the Board of Ed election. So
No, that's not what I said. I said that he didn't want to be involved in the Board of Ed elections, and that's what, that is based on my first parade that I attended, and Jerry had a banner made up that said the Lanky team on it. I questioned it at the time. Jerry said the mayor was endorsing us. I learned from Facebook and other people that the mayor didn't want to endorse anyone. He wanted to stay out of the Board of Ed election. When I asked Jerry and Mahesh about, is the mayor supporting us or not, they basically said, no, he wants to stay out of the Board of Ed election. He wants to keep it non-political. But we're going to convince him. He'll come around, is what Mahesh said. And that they were going to, and that eventually he would support us.
and where did you see that banner?
I think it was the Pakistani Day Parade, or it was the first event that we attended as the Unity team. But I think it was only Jerry and I who were at that parade.
Do you have any specific information that the mayor didn't want the banner there, or personally told you that he was not endorsing you on that day?
Later on, I didn't know the mayor at the time. I had met him several times after that at events. He wanted to stay out of the Board of Ed. He wanted to keep the politics and the Board of Ed separate. As I got to know him more, and as we spent more time we would show up at different events together. I got to know him, and eventually, down the road, he did come out and endorse us, but that was more towards, it wasn't early on, and I don't even know if it was halfway through the campaign. I think it was more towards the end that he finally came out and endorsed us.
So after the parade banner, which clearly stated that the mayor was endorsing the slate, was there a time he specifically said to you, I don't want to endorse you?
Not
Or the
those
slate?
words, no.
Okay.
No.
And are you aware of the letter that the Team Lanky put together endorsing your slate?
I'm not sure. Can I see it?
I'll pass it to the attorney first or the clerk. I have copies here if you'd like. I'll give one to the clerk here. And there's copies for the, I just want to identify some things you say which are specific. And again, I'm not here to beat you up. I want to find out like you want to find out. But I sense a lot of disappointment in this with you and others, and I just want to get clear on specifics. And that's all. Did you receive a copy of this?
They're just putting a sticker on it, Councilman, for
Okay.
identification purposes. We'll mark it Exhibit I.
I don't know if I've ever seen, I don't recall ever seeing this letter, to be honest.
Is it fair to say that this is, do you need time to read it?
Yes.
I can wait.
Oh, yeah, I just read the whole thing.
Is it fair to say this is a clear endorsement from Team Lanky?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to clarify his involvement in stating whether he's involved or not, and this clearly states that he's involved. Okay.
Okay.
And at what time, what date did the racist flyer go out? Do you know a rough date?
I'm not sure. Late October? I don't recall the exact date. Like I said, I didn't get it, so all I saw of it was either Facebook or people talking about it. And then on the news.
Now, I know you mentioned there were some meetings you went to with Shannon Pang, or Shannon didn't want to go to the meeting, or there were specifics at someone's house.
Yes.
And can you walk me through that again real quick?
Sure. We were at the convention center, some event, dancing, and it was an Indian type event. I can't remember the name of it, to be honest, but whatever they had. I'm sure if you go to their calendar from October 7th, you can find what the event was. After that, we went to Dunkin' Donuts to get some coffee, and from there we went to the home of Assistant to the Mayor Mahesh Bagia, his brother Raj. It was Jerry, Shannon, me, the two brothers, Bagia brothers, and Satish.
At that meeting, did you have any specific knowledge? Did you see a flyer or anything representing?
Yeah, this is the one that was on Shannon's computer, Exhibit D.
But the racist flyer, did you have any?
Oh, no.
No. So on that day, no specific knowledge of the racist flyer, just conversations about marketing, conversations about getting out the vote, and okay. Now, you mentioned font, and I'm confused on font. I'm not in the printing business. Do you have a marketing background? Do you work for a printer?
No.
Okay. And I'm not clear to know at all, but is it your opinion that this is the same printer, or do you have any factual specifics that you could tell me?
No, pretty much everything is my personal opinion.
Opinion that due to the racist flyer and the emblem, and due to some font, that this is your opinion, it's the same people?
Yeah, I hadn't even noticed the emblem until tonight, but I mean, yeah, when the colors and the fonts, the type, the print, the font, the letters look very similar, similar type of font.
Okay.
I mean, I use, I'm on a computer 10 hours a day. I write thousands of words a day. I change fonts on a regular basis, so it's not like being in a printing business. I see fonts every day from Microsoft Word and so forth. So it's, my personal opinion is that the fonts looked similar to me.
Okay. But you've never worked in a print shop? You have no?
No.
And do you know how many print shops are in Edison?
No.
Okay. How many fonts are on a computer?
Thousands.
Okay. I'm just trying to clarify your specifics. And again, I want to identify where this rolls out. I'm not trying to beat you up here, but I'm just clarifying whether it's just your opinion, or you have specifics.
Yes,
Okay.
everything, pretty much, except for the facts that I've stated from being in a room with people, everything that I've stated is my personal opinion.
And you spoke about Shannon Pang. Can you walk me through Shannon Pang and some discussions you had about your opinion with her and the racist flyer?
Shannon was a big supporter of our campaign. She was a fellow board member on the Board of Ed. She had, everybody talks about her grassroots campaign where she came from nowhere and won a seat on the board. I really liked Shannon.
And did you receive any specific knowledge of the racist flyer through an email or any discussions you've had with her about?
No, not specifically about the racist flyer, but you know, when I've questioned Shannon about some of Jerry's actions throughout the course of the campaign and after, she has said to me, and she said to several other of the board members, including some in our in our group here, that, you know, she's told Jerry several times to stay away from those people, and that they're just going to get him in trouble, and that he needs to distance himself from those people.
Okay, and we're going over the reports with the campaign reports. You mentioned at 7:46 that when we were discussing the campaign itself, and you mentioned you never think about, you know, the lawn signs, mailers, any of that. You had nothing to do with.
Ordering them and buying them,
and
no.
getting involved.
I mean, we put them out, but that's the, you know, they showed up on my porch, and, you know, or we took them out of Jerry's trunk, and we went around town and put them up and gave them to friends and, you know, that sort of thing.
So basically, you've had no knowledge of any flyers being made, who made the flyers, who paid for the flyers, how the report's done, what
No,
A to Z is doing, what any printer's doing, the
No,
company in
I
Knoxville.
knew that Jerry was dealing, or that had some of the flyers done with A to Z, but, you know, I don't know, you know, whether, the flyers and/or the lawn signs and things like that. I don't know, you know, I don't know exactly how much was spent on the printing and the flyers and the signs, but it was considerable.
You stated that you can be confused of what's going on. Is it fair to still say that as far as the mailers, and it's confusing who's doing what?
No, I mean, I think I mentioned early on, I didn't say I was confused. I said I was new and I didn't know what a PAC was, and I wasn't, I was never involved in politics. But, you know, none of us on the team really knew how much was being spent on flyers and, you know, how many flyers were made and how many lawn signs we had, that sort of thing. They just, you know, Jerry took care of it.
So it's fair to say that you had no knowledge of anything going on with lawn signs, letters, flyers, drafting of graphics, pretty much that was out of your hands and you had no knowledge at all?
No, not until after they were done or came out.
And you have no specifics of any information on the racist flyer?
No, just my personal opinion and the discussion that night at the House.
Okay. Council President, I'll add to my discussion later. Thank you.
Council President?
Yes, sir.
One follow-up question for Paul. When you say that Shannon Pang counseled or advised Jerry Shi to stay away from those people, who would you identify as those people?
She was specifically referring to Satish Pundi, Mahesh Bhagia, and Councilman A.J. Patil.
Thank you, Council President.
Council President,
Yes,
and
sir.
thank you, Paul, for it's more than an hour here. Do you recall how many events you attended during that time frame?
At least more than a dozen.
Doesn't. Do you know who attended those events along with you?
Yeah, I mean, you were at a lot of them. The same group, pretty much. There were several other gentlemen who were, you know, not exactly part of the campaign, but they supported us, and we saw them, and they came up to us at a lot of those same events.
Do you recall any council members and the mayor to be part of those events?
The mayor was at several of those events, yes.
But you didn't mention to begin with.
That I didn't mention, I'm sorry?
Yeah, you didn't mention to begin with unless I asked you specific, who else?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Okay, so
There were hundreds, maybe thousands of people at those
Yeah.
events.
Specifically, any council member or the mayor?
Yeah, I think Bob was at some of them, Mr. Coyle, Sam, I believe. I'm not 100% sure, but I think, you know, Sam was at some of those events. But these were Can't think of the name of what those the events were with the dance and everything, but
It's a Garba.
Yes.
It's a Garba event.
yes.
So it's a broader audience, right?
Yes.
But you would definitely remember the elected officials who were around you.
Oh, yeah, there were people from outside of Edison, Middlesex County people, people from the state. There were a lot of people at those events.
Okay.
But I didn't think to mention everyone,
Right.
just the people that were supporting us and that were, leading us around at these events.
Correct. So do you mean to say that there were several elected officials around you were also supporting your campaign?
Elected officials. Not outside that core group that I mentioned. I mean, there
Can
were.
you mention the elected officials from that core group? I don't know what the core group means, but in general.
I believe that you and Shark were the only elected officials that were in that group.
So you mean to say that the mayor was not supporting you? If you mention the Councilman Coyle, Councilman Deal, Councilman Joshi,
Well, there's a
none
difference
of them were supporting you?
between seeing someone at an event where there's thousands of people and seeing the same 4 or 5 people at specific meet and greets where the other people aren't always in attendance. There were the same group that basically helped Jerry with his campaign and us with our campaign, and then there were other people who came and went at different events.
Okay. Do you know that you were running under the banner Team Lanky?
Yes.
And who else? Okay, thank you. And who else were under that Team Lanky banner? Who were running with you?
I believe it was everyone on the Unity team.
Can you name it?
Yes, it was
Just for public
Falcone
information.
Patel, Beth Maroney, Paul DiStefano, and Jerry Shee.
So Team Lanky included you, Beth Maroney, Jerry Shee, and who else? Falguni Patel,
Yes.
correct? So this was a Team Lanky.
As far as I was told, it wasn't officially Team Lanky because because the mayor wasn't in agreement when that banner was made.
Do you have a knowledge of that you were not aware or the mayor was not aware? Because just now the mayor's endorsement letter was passed to this council.
But it's not
And you have a
dated,
copy.
and I don't think, and like I said, the mayor didn't endorse us until towards the end of the campaign. It was very clear that that banner was made up without the mayor's knowledge.
Are you sure or you're guessing it?
Yes, I'm sure.
Okay, so still you say that you ran under Mayor Lanky's banner, Lanky team.
Well, we walked in that parade. The banner was there. I questioned it. That day. Jerry told me that the mayor was going to endorse us. But then once I started seeing other people questioning the banner, I questioned it further. And that's when I was told that the mayor didn't want to get involved in the Board of Ed election. He wanted to keep it separate. And it's like I said, I don't know when this letter is dated. I don't recall ever receiving this letter. But the mayor did endorse us towards the end of the campaign, and I appreciate that. But he was not endorsing us early on in the campaign.
Okay, so when you were walking under Team Lanky banner, mayor also attended the same event. Do you recall this?
I do not recall seeing the mayor there.
You sure?
I'm sure he was.
Okay.
But no, he was not walking with us. I don't recall seeing the mayor at that event.
Okay, because mayor was in the walking ahead of your banner, not exactly at 5 feet distance, but he was there in that rally.
Okay.
Right. So did anyone say anything to you, including the council members who were also running under the same banner, Team Lanky? Do you know who those people are?
Back then in that election?
Yes, 2017?
Yeah, but I believe Mr. Deal and Mr. Sam. I don't recall, I'm sorry, I don't recall who else was running for council.
I was.
Okay, sorry.
So did you speak to any Mayor Team Lanky and Board of Ed Team Lanky? You had any discussion, one-on-one, or maybe group discussion, or any point in time, any meeting?
I don't think so, no. I mean, at the time,
You are one
No.
happy family?
I'm sorry?
You are one happy family, Team Lanky, going into multiple events?
No, I mean, I mean, that was a really weird election. You know, two of the people that were running were on a different banner, on a different lawn sign. So, you know, I didn't really know them, and I really didn't have many conversations with them because, you know, I just assumed that it was, you know, that there was some tension or some bad blood there.
My last question, do you agree that you ran under Team Lanky banner, or yes or no? At the end of the day?
Can you explain ran under it? I mean, we walked with that banner that one day in that one
Not just the
parade.
banner, under that brand, because the whole Board of Ed slate was labeled as Team Lanky.
Yeah, and it really wasn't. But yeah, the banner said Team Lanky. Jerry liked to throw that term around, but it really wasn't. Not until the end of the campaign when the mayor came out and endorsed us.
Correct. So this endorsement, is there a date on that by any chance?
No,
Because
there's
I
no
didn't-
date. And like I said, I don't recall seeing this particular letter.
So this was not given, but you were aware that Mayor Lanky endorsed at the tail end of the,
Yes, I did.
A week
I do
before?
remember him publicly saying that he endorsed us, yes.
thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that Mayor Lanky did endorse you publicly, and you ran under the Team Lanky as a slate, and this endorsement happened probably a week or 2 weeks before the election. It's a tail end of the
It
election.
was towards the end, but yeah, and again, I wouldn't say we ran under Team Lanky. We were the unity team and
Endorsed by
endorsed by the mayor.
Mayor Lanky.
Yes.
It's the same as Team Lanky. Thank you.
Council President, may I just a few minutes, Mrs. Vaughn, I just want to get a few things clear. Who were your opponents in the election? You had another group running against you, correct?
Yeah, I think there were 9 candidates total, I believe. I was just running head-to-head for the one-year term against Mr. Arugio. And then there was, you know, the 3 members of my team who were running for the 3-year term, and I believe they had 4, I think they had 4 opponents. I would have to see the...
Do you know who was endorsing those 4 opponents?
I believe the teachers' union endorsed some. Other than that, I'm not sure
I
if
guess
they
what
had
I
any
want to try to
formal
identify
endorsements.
with you is that the Team Lanky group slate, it was quite obvious that they weren't hurting you in any way or running against you in any way. They didn't send a mailer out against you. They didn't do anything obvious. I mean, I attended these events. There's Facebook pictures of us everywhere. Would it be fair to say you were happy to get the mayor's endorsement, or at least have the fundamental feeling that we were together?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. I mean, was it obvious that the other side was not with you?
The other side, meaning the other candidates?
The other candidates?
Well, yeah, obviously.
Were they being supported by Keith Hahn for mayor?
I don't recall.
I guess what I'm just trying to identify is that you're making a statement you're not sure of the endorsement. It's quite obvious that
Which endorsement? Theirs or
endorsement
ours?
from the mayor, Tom Lanky.
Well,
and
I'm
Team Lanky.
sure. We weren't
Okay.
endorsed by him in the beginning, and he endorsed us towards the end.
Did any of the council members running for election send out any mailers against you or have discussions with you that they didn't want to support you?
Not that I'm aware of.
Any detailed, specific emails? I'm not interested in helping you. I don't want to be a part of it.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
I mean, is it fair to say it's a good thing to get the mayor to support you?
I would imagine so, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Council President,
Yes, sir.
just a couple follow-up questions. I think we've kind of diverged from the racial flyer to who endorsed who. But to get back to the racial flyer issue, do you believe that People for Progress had anything to do with the racial flyer that went out in November of 2017?
I would imagine that the people who sent out the People for Progress flyer are the same people who I would assume that they're the same people, yes.
And based upon, and I'm not sure what the exhibit was, but based upon one of the exhibits that was shown before, you believe that Shannon Pang was somehow connected to People for Progress?
Yeah, based on this, she had told me it was a mailer that was going to go out to parents, and then 2 days later, some of the parents got it with the People for Progress label at the bottom.
Thank you, Council President. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Anything else?
Council President, just one last question here. Do you have specific information that the racist flyer and People for Progress, do you have any specific emails that the People for Progress and the racist flyer are tied together?
No, I have no physical evidence about the racist flyer.
Your opinion?
Yes, everything
Okay.
I'm stating
But
is my opinion.
no specific emails that they're tied together, People for Progress? And who runs People for Progress? Do you know?
The name is Mr. Morales.
Do you know who Jaffe Communication is?
No,
Are they tied to People for Progress?
I don't know.
Okay. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, sir. If nobody else has any questions, I want to thank Mr. Paul DiStefano.
Thank you.
For spending a little bit more of an hour with us. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Okay.
And have a good evening, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, we are going to call our next witness, Ms. Beth Maroney.
Address, please.
107 Stephenville Parkway, Edison, New Jersey.
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. I'm going to let the subcommittee take the lead on questions.
Thank you, Council President. Good evening, Beth. Thank you for coming tonight. There's a long testimony from Paul. He shared a lot of information. What can you add to that, or what can you tell us about the election and the flyer?
Before I answer any of your questions this evening, I would like to make an opening statement. My name is Beth Maroney, and although I have been a member of the Edison Board of Education for 5 years, I appear tonight to express my thoughts and knowledge of events as an individual in the community and not as a board member. Last Friday, the members of the Board of Education received an email from the board attorney, Ramon Rivera, of the Scarinci-Hollenbeck firm, in which he directed board members not to appear tonight and not to give any testimony. His reasoning for us not to speak was that the board is about to engage in a lawsuit against the zoning board regarding the issue of overcrowding in Edison. I don't anticipate that questions will be asked in this forum regarding this suit, and you stated previously that this tonight would only be about the flyer. But I just want to be clear that I cannot and will not answer any questions if that matter should arise. As with any attorney, Mr. Rivera cannot direct members of the board as to what to do. He can advise, but he cannot definitively tell us we cannot speak. Because I was a member of the Unity team, and Falguni Patel and Jerry Shee were my running mates, the issue of the flyer caused me a lot of distress, consternation, and dismay. I chose to come tonight because I believe that speaking the truths that I know will help me to put to rest the anxieties that the events of 2017 caused me personally. I refuse to be silenced by pressure from anyone regarding what I experienced during that Board of Ed election. The first time that I became aware of People for Progress was in September of 2017. I was told by a teacher whose child attended John Adams that a lengthy email had been sent to the parents of John Adams students. It was signed by Andrew Morales and People for Progress. And that email, which she brought up for me to read, was vehemently against Mrs. Badofsky, Mrs. Conway, and myself. That was the first People for Progress document that went out. I was told a little later that that flyer, or that People for Progress, was actually Jerry Shee. And so I was very upset, and I called Mr. Shee, and I met with him at the Menlo Park Diner, and he said to me, "Oh, I would never do that to you. I wouldn't do such a thing. I'm not People for Progress. I wouldn't do that." And I wanted very much to believe him, but it was hard, I have to say. Subsequent to that, by the way, I did not walk in the parades. I had serious knee issues and had surgery the day after the election on my knee, so I wasn't part of any of that. The next thing that I became aware of was I received a phone call from Jeff Bowden, the president of the ETEA. And Mr. Bowden has always been very supportive of me. I'm a former teacher and a former administrator in the Edison Township school system. And Mr. Bowden called me, this was sometime, I would say, in the middle of October, extremely upset about a flyer that went out from the Unity team. This is the flyer. And this flyer attacked Mr. Bowden and Mr. Hahn on the front of it. And on the back of the flyer are the pictures of the Unity team. Mr. Bowden said to me, "How could you do this?" And I said, "I don't know anything about it." And I was sick, because this happened to be in my mailbox at the same time. So I did have a copy of it to look at right away. I immediately started calling Mr. Shee. I thought that this had been done by somebody else to discredit the Unity team, because that's one of the issues when you have these kinds of flyers. Anybody can use the same font, let's be honest. You know, anybody can put out a flyer saying it's from the Unity team, but it could be somebody else putting it out. You don't really know. So thinking that, I called Mr. Shee and I said, "Jerry, something terrible has happened. This flyer went out and Jeff Bowden called me and he's very upset." And Jerry said, "Oh, no, we put that out. Yeah, we did it." And I was dumbstruck. And I said, "I don't understand. How could you put something this vile out in the public without consulting the team?" The only flyer the entire team was ever consulted on was that first flyer, which you had in exhibit, with the pictures of the Unity team. And my brother had actually taken the photograph that's here that we did in August of 2017. But that was the involvement, all of the involvement that I ever had in any of the flyers. Subsequent to this, another flyer from People for Progress came out identical to this. So now, how can you not put two and two together? People for Progress is the Unity team. The flyers were almost identical. So that really, like Mr. DeStefano said, there were a lot of things going through my head. I have to say that I was very naive during the campaign. I joined forces with Mr. Shee in the spring of 2017 because we were two incumbents who had sat next to each other on the Board of Ed for 3.5 years, and we were very friendly. We didn't always agree on things, but we were friendly, and it seemed the natural thing for Jerry and me to run together and to get another candidate, which he set out to do. And Jerry was very effective in raising money and in putting the team together, and he took care of everything. And he just, every time I would ask a question regarding money, how much did we make at a campaign event, the answer was always the same. Don't worry about it. You don't worry about it. You have nothing to worry about. I'm taking care of everything. So he refused to answer any questions that I had regarding campaign fundraising, flyers, any of it. I was told where to appear and when to appear. And so, like Mr. DiStefano, I went to the Gerba event, which was wonderful. I enjoyed that immensely. We did a lot of meet and greets in people's homes, and that was very exciting and wonderful because we had an opportunity to meet members of the Edison community, and I really enjoyed all of that. But whenever I would ask anything regarding flyers or money fundraising, I was never given an answer.
Council President?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Maroney, thank you again for coming in. In terms of People for Progress, have you met, do you know of Andres or Andrew Morales?
No, I always believed that Andrew Morales was a fictional character. Like Mr. DiStefano, I tried to track such a person down, and he's a fiction.
Okay.
There's no doubt in my mind about that.
And what efforts were made to track Mr. Morales down by you?
Internet searches, talking to some people, asking if anybody knew who he was. Yeah, that was it.
When did you first become aware of the racist flyer?
I got a phone call from Falgany the afternoon the flyer came out. I did not receive the flyer, and she was very distraught and explained it to me. I spoke to her for some time. The police had contacted her, and she went immediately to the police department to discuss the flyer with them. One of the things that she was extremely worried about was her job and what impact something like this was going to have on her job as an attorney. And she was very frightened, as Mr. DiStefano said. In looking at the flyer, I have to say that I agree with Mr. DiStefano. I never gave it a second thought as to whom was responsible for it. Because in our election, Rushika Juneja, Akib Varan, Sunil Vupala were members of the Indian community who put themselves out to run for the Board of Education. If this were truly a racist flyer targeting South Asians and Chinese, then why weren't those other 3 people on the racist flyer? Why was it only the 2 people from the Unity team on that flyer? Also, if you turn the racist flyer over, which very few people do, if you look at the message is much of what the Unity team's message was throughout the campaign. Why would you put this on the back of a flyer that's racist? Stop the overcrowding, stop taking over our sports fields. This has nothing to do with racism. This is the message that the Unity team wanted to put out to the community. And the overcrowding issue is what the Board of Ed has been devoted to for the last 2 years. So if you put it together, it would seem to me that this flyer was done to get people out to vote for the two victims, so-called victims, on the front of the flyer. If it were truly a matter of hatred, all 5 of the Asians would have been on the flyer. And I wanted to confront members of my team about this. I attended the event at the Y, in which the community came together to support everyone and to celebrate the diversity in Edison. And I looked at Mr. Shi and I thought, he's the victim. How can I blame the victim for what I believe this is? And the whole business was sickening to me.
Ms. Maroney,
But,
when
yeah.
you said earlier that, like Mr. DiStefano, there was little doubt in your mind as to who was responsible for this, can you just clarify as to who that is that you're talking about?
I'm talking about Mr. Shi specifically.
And you spoke before that you had a conversation the day that the flyer came out with Falguni Patel.
Yes.
Did you also attempt contact, or was contact made with Mr. Shi on the day that you found out about the flyer?
No, I didn't. I do know, though, from Falguni that Jerry refused to go and speak to the police, which I found curious, because if somebody had attacked me like this, I would have been very eager to cooperate with law enforcement to get to the bottom of it. However, that being said, that's Beth Maroney and what Beth Maroney would do. That may not be what Mr. Shi would do. But I still thought it was very peculiar.
And do you know why the Unity team hired an attorney in December of 2017?
Yes, because of the flyer that I showed you, in which we attacked Mr. Bowden. Mr. Bowden felt that his family had been dragged into this, election, and had no reason that he or Mr. Hahn should have been dragged in on this flyer. And so he sent us a notice, a tort, that there was a possibility of a lawsuit, and he had a year to make that decision. And Mr. Bowden could tell you that I went nuts on that. It was very upsetting to me. That tort I received the night before my surgery. And I called Mr. Bowden and said, how could you do this to me? I'm having surgery tomorrow, and it's not bad enough that I'm upset about that, but now I need to worry about a lawsuit. I take these things very personally and very seriously, and it was very hurtful to me. And so Mr. Shi did go out and once again did not really consult the Unity team. He went out and hired a firm, I believe they were from Trenton, and as Mr. DiStefano said, Jerry said initially that he would cover the costs of the attorney, but as time went on, he backed away from that, and he also backed away from saying that he was alone responsible for the flyer. And again, that was extremely shocking and hurtful. So if it had become a lawsuit, I have no doubt that Mr. Shi would have dragged the entire Unity team through the situation and would have made us pay as well.
My final question, getting back to the racial flyer. Did you have any involvement in creating, mailing, or disseminating it?
No.
I have no further questions.
When did you learn these flyers? When did you first hear about the flyer?
The
racist flyer.
The racist flyer on the day that it was received and mailed out.
Okay, and your initial thought, you felt that they were victims.
Yes, what the immediate thought was that they were victims. Val was so upset. And, she didn't know anybody at that time. The only people that she knew, Board of Ed, were Jerry, me, Shivy, and Paul. So she didn't have anybody to turn to discuss it with.
When did you first realize, or come to terms with the reality that 2 members from your unity team were on the flyers, the racist flyer, whereas there were multiple other Indian or Asian people running for Board of Ed elections as well?
Immediately.
Okay. And when did you realize that, when did you learn that these flyers were sent to Indian and Chinese voters?
When I didn't receive it, and other people whom I was asking hadn't received it, and when you did find out who had received it, so it was a gradual recognition. On my part, it wasn't an immediate recognition, so I would say that was, gradual. So it took maybe a week or so.
Okay. No further questions.
Would you be able to tell us who told you that Mr. Shi was People for Progress?
There were several people in that September, when that first People for Progress letter went out, who told me. I really cannot remember, but I do want to say this, that one night at a Board of Ed meeting recently, when Mr. DeStefano spoke to the board about the flyers, Mrs. Peng, who sits next to me at the Board of Ed, stated, well, I only did one of the People for Progress flyers. She said that right to me. And I was stunned, because that was the first that anybody had admitted anything to me, but she did make that statement to me at a Board of Ed meeting.
Thank you.
Any more questions from the committee?
Council President,
Yes, Mr. Cordero.
Beth, Ms. Maroney, thank you for taking the time to come out tonight and presenting facts and opinions that you have. First, do you have any specific knowledge of an email or a flyer, anything sent to you by email regards to the racist flyer?
Of an email
Do you have,
sent
do you
to
have any
me
specific
regarding
knowledge
it?
of any email sent to you, any correspondence, any specific facts
No,
of who designed,
No.
who printed,
no,
any conversations you witnessed about the specific, about this
no.
flyer? Okay. I know you're disappointed in Mr. Shi and his leadership of running the campaign. The flyer you mentioned through Mr. Bowden, that he was disappointed. What date was that flyer sent out,
I want to say
roughly?
about October 15th. It was not right before the election, but it was fairly close.
Were you at odds between disconnecting yourself from the campaign, or did you also have some understanding there was a benefit to stay with the group you're with because of the team you're together?
That's a very good question. I actually was given the opportunity to pull away from the Unity team by an offer from NJEA of a considerable campaign contribution. And because I'm loyal, I did not want to leave Jerry and the team, so I turned down the opportunity to pull away and run by myself. And I would like to make one statement about that also. I believe that I was the front runner in the election going into the final days. When I ran the first time for the Board of Ed, I was the #1 vote getter. And it's no secret that I work very hard for the community and the schools, and that I do have a lot of support, for which I am extremely grateful. I believed that the next 2 people behind me were Ms. Conway and Mrs. Badowski coming into the last couple of weeks before the campaign. I think that Jerry sensed that he was lagging behind, and Fal, nobody even knew who she was, to be fair. I didn't really give her much chance of winning the election, because we only had one opportunity to speak to the public, and it wasn't even to the public, it was before the teachers' union at their candidates' night. So there wasn't a lot of exposure for her, and I didn't really think she had a chance to win going in. But then after the flyer, that all changed.
Were there any specific emails you may have sent to Jerry Shi or any board member that you wanted to withdraw?
No.
Did you send any emails that you were disappointed in the flyer that Mr. Bowden discussed?
That Mr. Bowden, that
Mentioned.
flyer?
Yeah.
No, I didn't email
emails.
about it.
Was there a point that you sent an email that you wanted to withdraw
No, oh, no.
campaign? When you were sworn in, was there a moment you wanted to withdraw when you were sworn in?
No.
Okay, just checking here. Now, were you aware of the Team Lanky endorsement?
There
that I
was no
had-
Team Lanky endorsement.
Okay. The letter that do you want a copy of this letter from Mr. Lanky?
Yes.
It should be in front of you, it marked as Exhibit I believe.
I never saw this before tonight. I don't recall receiving it in the mail. And also, I want to point out that my name is misspelled on this letter, and whoever did this should be ashamed of themselves.
I'm sorry about that. Just to clarify, were you aware of that Mr. Lanky endorsed your ticket?
Mr. Lanky really never endorsed the team. I want to go back to the parade issue for a moment, if you'll indulge me.
I just want to get to specifics, though. I don't want to go on. Do you have any, and I don't want to take up more time, and I don't mean to cut you off, Ms. Maroney, and I just want to get to specifics about this. Did you, were you aware that he endorsed you, yes or no?
No, I was not aware. I know that he appeared with us at several meet and greets. We never, not at any of the Gerbas or any of the big events, was Mayor Lanky in attendance, not at any of the ones that I was, and he never spoke on our behalf. The only time I recall Mayor Lanky speaking on our behalf was at one of the meet and greets in someone's backyard in August, and we were all up on a dais and we all spoke, and at that time he did endorse us. But that was the only public meeting that I ever recall that the mayor publicly endorsed us.
Did Team Lanky send out any flyers against you running for office, requesting not to vote for you?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Do you have any specific knowledge of him sending a mailer, by email, any correspondence, any graphics that he was not supporting you and the team?
No.
Okay, and you were not aware of this letter of endorsement?
No, I don't recall seeing it.
Okay. And one more time, do you have any specific knowledge of the racist flyer? Any emails, any correspondence, any facts that you can tell me?
No, I do not.
Okay, is most of your testimony an opinion of what you believe that may have happened?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Maroney, thank you again for coming tonight. Just a question, you were going to elaborate a little bit more on what occurred during the parade?
Well, Jerry called me and told me that he had had the banner made up and that Mayor Lanky was in fact endorsing the team. And I said, "Are you sure about that?" And he said, "Oh, yeah, I'm sure about that." And I said, "I really don't think you should walk with that banner. I think it's too early, and I'm not 100% convinced that Mayor Lanky has in fact endorsed us." And then I found out after the parade that in fact there was a lot of issues and problems, and that the mayor was very unhappy that they had walked with that banner because he did not endorse the Unity team prior. So that was all I wanted to add to that.
Thank you. You also said that Ms. Shannon Pang admitted to you that she did one of the flyers?
Yes. Her exact words to me were, "I only did one of the flyers."
And when did she do that? When did she admit that?
That was at a Board of Education meeting. I don't remember the exact date, but I believe Mr. Hahn was there, and Mr. DiStefano, and they were coming to talk about the flyers and tried to get some answers at a Board of Ed meeting. And that's when she turned to me and she said, I only did one People for Progress flyer.
Was that 2017 or later than that?
It was this year.
Oh,
It was
this year,
2019.
2019.
Yeah, 19.
Okay, thank you.
Council President, Ms. Maroney, do you know the specific flyer that she made?
No,
Okay. No emails, no correspondence of that?
no.
Thank you, Council President.
Yep.
Council President,
Yes, sir.
thank you. It's really candid and honest Q&A so far, and I'm really thankful that you're speaking from your heart, and you're telling us the truth, not like any other witness. Do you recall how many meetings you had with Mr. Shi?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
How many meetings you had with Mr. Shi?
How many meetings I had with Mr. Shi? Do you mean
Roughly. How-
during the election
Yes,
period?
Yes.
I would say maybe 8 or so.
Do you know who were in attendance of those meetings?
Well, very frequently, it was the Unity team meeting at Panera to sign documents, to plan strategy. It was usually the team.
Okay. Did you see me any of those meetings?
Did I see you at any of the meetings? I saw you at some of the events that we went to, but I don't recall seeing you at any of the meetings.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
In the events, other than me, and I was probably the first one who said that this is the right team, and I candidly said that this is the winning team, if you recall that.
I do.
Right. And several, there were meet and greet, and I was more of coordinating between the Team Lanky event, which is the mayor and the council, as well as the Board of Ed. So anything that I would hear from two teams, I would invite, especially if any South Asian events, and I did attend those events along with both the teams. So do you think there was any coordination between these two teams in terms of the campaign planning, any cooperation, or this was just mere?
You asked me between Mayor Lanky's group and
Yes.
the Unity team?
Mhm.
Do I think that there was any? Well, I know that there was a relationship, but I cannot speak to the depth of the relationship. I was not present, as Paul was in that one evening meeting. I will also say that you were always very supportive of me and, helped me through some bad moments from time to time.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you. I'm just going to remind council members, please, to do not make any derogatory comments towards the witnesses or anybody else. Thank you.
Council President,
Yes, sir.
Beth, my last question. Is it fair to say that the Lanky team and your team were benefactors of each other working together, because you weren't working against each other?
We were not working against each other. In terms of benefactors,
Carrying votes, helping each other, means you have different factions.
not really.
So the Board of Ed or Jerry Shi in no way helped Mr. Lanky get elected?
I don't believe so. When push comes to shove on the votes, I really don't think the Unity team had an impact on the mayoral campaign or the campaign of any of the councilmen who were running at that time. I guess in my heart, I want to believe that the Board of Ed is the Board of Ed, and the town council and the mayor are in their faction, and I really find it hard to believe that the Unity team had an impact on the mayor's campaign.
I guess what I'm getting at is, since we've switched the election to November, on that same day, you're voting for, other candidates and elected officials, council and mayor, and then you're voting for Board of Ed. In the past, we did this in a different time. It was completely separate. In any way, was the mayor working and Jerry Shi working against each other?
No.
Okay, so there's some synergy, some energy.
Please don't put words in my mouth. I'm not going to say that.
Okay. But it's fair to say that they were not working against each other.
They weren't working against each other, and I really did not feel, as Mr. DiStefano said, I did not feel that the mayor truly wanted to invest in Board of Ed. He wanted to stay out of Board of Ed because I believe that the mayor has maintained the separation between the Board of Ed and the mayor's office and town council up until the time that we created the committee that we have established so that we do have a line of communication. So no, I don't think so.
Was it clear that Keith Hahn for mayor was working against Tom Lanky and your ticket?
No, I didn't get the sense that Mr. Hahn was working against our ticket. Clearly, he was running against the mayor, so he's going to be on the opposite side. Keith and I had some conversations during the election period in which he was very supportive of me. We didn't really talk about the rest of the Unity team.
I guess my last point here, did Keith Hahn's team have a separate group of Board of Ed candidates than you?
No,
So it's fair
not that I knew of.
Okay. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you.
Council President?
Yes, sir.
Again, I think we're losing focus as to who was endorsing who. But to get back to your original opening statement, I just had a couple of questions. Did the Board of Education retain Mr. Rivera to represent the board with regard to this committee of the whole?
No.
Okay. Because, and this may be the same letter that you received, but I received a letter from Mr. Rivera saying it's addressed to Mr. Malik Schmidt, our attorney. Our office represents the Edison Board of Education with respect to the above referenced matter. The above referenced matter is the Committee of the Whole on recent elections in Edison Township.
All right, so I'm going to tell you what I think here, how I feel about the lawyer, the attorney. When Mr. Shi was elected president of the Board of Education, he wanted to find a lawyer whom he felt would support his opinions. And so behind the back of 4 of the members of the board, he found Scarinci Hollenbeck firm. There was some meetings, these are kind of the notorious meetings at Panera and the grocery store, where firms were interviewed, and then one night, 4 of us at a Board of Ed meeting shortly after Mr. Shi became elected president in 2018, they fired the firm that had been representing us for several years and hired Scarinci Hollenbeck without 4 of us knowing or having an opportunity to interview the attorney. And so from that time, I have felt unrepresented as a Board of Ed member. I do not feel I have representation legally on the Board of Ed.
So prior to you receiving the letter, and I don't want you to talk about any conversations you may have had with Mr. Rivera, but did Mr. Rivera contact you prior to sending this letter to you?
Mr. Rivera doesn't speak to me.
Okay. Do you know if the board ever took an informal or formal vote on asking Mr. Rivera to send this letter out to Mr. Malik Schmidt in terms of the Committee of the Whole?
No, it was never discussed.
Okay. Would any board member have the authority to have Mr. Rivera send a letter out on behalf of the board without getting board approval?
The board president.
And who is the board president?
Mr. Shi.
Thank you. No further questions.
Council President.
Yes, sir.
Well, unless there's other questions, I was hoping we could still get to the detective tonight.
I believe we have no further questions. Thank you, Ms. Maroney.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here with us tonight.
You're welcome.
Now we'd like to call Detective Keith Hahn.
Thank you, Council President. Keith Hahn, 81 Fairview Avenue.
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the
Yes, I did.
Subcommittee may proceed.
Okay. Good evening, Keith. Thank you for coming tonight.
Good evening, Councilman.
Okay, we've heard a lot already. I want to thank you for coming and at this time ask you what you can share.
First, I would like to thank you, Councilman Deal, and Councilman Joshi, for their steadfast commitment to following through on this investigation and to exposing those responsible for this despicable racial flyer. Let me be clear in no uncertain terms. I had nothing to do with this flyer, and my family had nothing to do with this flyer. I condemn not only the flyer, but the politics and the individuals responsible. The negative impact of this flyer and the accusations that followed in the aftermath were felt not only by me, but my family. My wife, Liz, my 10-year-old daughter, my 8-year-old son suffered through the media assault and allegations of me being the racist responsible. I voluntarily came here tonight not only to clear my name, but as an example of my children who are sitting here at this late hour. He got a little nap, so I think he's wide awake now. And I want to show them to always do the right thing, to stand up for what you believe in and what you believe is right, no matter how hard or how difficult it may be. And to always treat others with the way you want to be treated, with dignity and respect. I've been a police officer for 25 years. I'm currently assigned as a detective in the Edison Police Department. During my career, I was assigned for almost 3 years as an investigator with the Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office. I was assigned to the New Jersey State Police Public Corruption Unit for 60 days to investigate a corrupt police lieutenant. I worked with the DEA in both an investigative and undercover capacity. I worked with the FBI on a prostitution sex trafficking case involving elected officials, and I have testified as an expert in both municipal and superior court. I was also elected by my peers as state delegate of the New Jersey PBA, a position I held for 10 years. And I was also elected by my peers as PBA president. My 25-year law enforcement career, most of which has been spent in an investigative capacity, provide me with a unique perspective and skill set to examine the facts surrounding the creation and distribution of this despicable flyer. With your permission, I would like to go through a chronological timeline of the facts that I've gathered with the permission of the committee. Thank you. On May 7, 2017, a lawsuit filed against me by Democratic Committeewoman Debbie Andrews, which accused me of being a racist, was dismissed by Superior Court Judge Arthur Bergman. Andrews was represented by attorney Lou Mangione of the Spivak Law Firm. Mangione hosted a fundraiser and contributed to Mayor Lanke's campaign. I also have been informed that he was paid to represent Ms. Andrews by a council person. On May 26, 2017, Shannon Pang filed a police report for harassment after she found a dead animal on her doorstep. Pang told Patrolman Don Shipp I was responsible, but was unable to provide any facts or reasons other than I was not a supporter of Jerry Shee. On August 13, 2017, was the Indian Day Parade with that banner that everybody's been talking about. And if I could just shed some light on that, despite me and Mayor Lanke being adversaries during the campaign, we do have candid conversations quite frequently. After that banner was carried in the parade on August 13th, I called up Mayor Lanke and I said, Tom, what are you doing? You told me you're not going to get involved in the Board of Ed campaign. Mayor Lanke told me that at that time, he didn't. They printed that banner and they carried it in the parade without his authorization. I thought that was odd, that he wouldn't rebut that or come out against it, being it was a parade with 40,000 people, but that's what he did tell me at that time, August 13th or 14th or 15th, shortly thereafter. On September 18th of 2017, this is leading up to the election, Edison Board of Education and Township Auditor Andy Hodgelik of the firm Hodgelik & Morrison gave $7,200 to a PAC known as People Energizing Government, or PEG-PAC. PEG-PAC is run by New Jersey Democratic Committee Vice Chairwoman Peg Schaefer, who is a partner at the law firm Shane Schaefer, and actually uses the law firm's address for her ELEC filings. Nathan Rudy, the former chairman of the Edison Chamber of Commerce and a friend of Mayor Lanke, filed NJ ELEC form for as PEG-PAC's treasurer for the above donation on 10/16/17. On October 9th, there was a series of text messages that went through, Mr. DeStefano covered. I have the context of them text messages if anybody would like to ask any questions about them. October 16th, that was Exhibit E, which you guys showed, which was an email of a flyer sent by Andre Morales and People for Progress. October 17th was Exhibit B, which you guys had shown, and it included BOE Unity team member Paul DeStefano was forwarded an email from a parent. That was Exhibit, the email from the parent. Was that Exhibit B or, I'm sorry, Exhibit D?
I think you're referring to Exhibit E would be the email that was sent by the soccer.
Correct.
Excuse me, the hockey family,
Yes, sir.
is that correct?
Yes, sir. On October 22nd, 3 political mailers were sent to Edison residents using U.S. postage permit number 298. One was paid for by the election fund of Thomas Lanke. A second, paid for by the EDO, or the Edison Democratic Organization. And a third, paid for by People for Progress, A. Morales, treasurer. Michael Roche, owner of Stuyvesant Green Earth Press at 119 Coit Street in Irvington, stated all 3 flyers were printed for Jaffe Communications. On October 23rd, 3 additional political mailers were sent to Edison residents. Both were talked about, or 2 of them were talked about by Ms. Maroney. On October 27th, Peg Schaefer and her PAC fund gave check number 340 for $2,800 to Jerry Shee's BOE Unity team. Peg Schaefer also gave check number 339 for $7,200 to the anonymous group People for Progress. That is the same amount that Andy Hodgelik, the township auditor, gave to them on September 18th. Andy Hodgelik also serves as vice chairman of Magyar Bank, where Mayor Lanke serves as chairman. On October 29th, an email flyer was sent out using the Township Board of Education email list from Andrew Morales, People for Progress. The web address on that email was newsletter@edisonpolitics.com and paid for by People for Progress, accusing me of associating with criminals, stealing, and making racial slurs. EdisonPolitics.com was registered with Dynadot.com on May 28, 2014, and has been responsible for negative campaign messaging attributed to Mayor Lanke's campaign manager, Anthony Rusomano, in the past 5 years. On October 30th, People for Progress, the anonymous group which lists Andres Morales as its treasurer, wrote check number 0991 to Skyway Strategies for $3,299. Skyway Strategies is a subsidiary or another entity of Jaffe Communications, which was hired by Mayor Lanke to run all aspects of his campaign, including print media. Skyway Strategies is run by Tony Galata. It has a one-page website that lists no address and a phone number of 973-315-03,000. When calling Skyway Strategies, the phone is answered Jaffe Communications. Jaffe Communications website states Tony Galata directs the political consulting practice at Jaffe Communications for municipal, county, and statewide races throughout New Jersey. It's also important to note Jaffe Communications has a professional consultant services contract not subject to competitive bid for $44,000 a year with Edison Township. That contract was signed by both Mayor Lanke and the owner of Jaffe Communications, Jonathan Jaffe. On November 1st, the racial flyers hit the mailbox. That same day, the racial flyers hit mailboxes. People for Progress filed electronically at 12:52 a.m. NJ Elect Form C3 and reported receiving $7,200 from Peg Schaefer and her PAC on October 31st. They also filed Form C3 electronically at 1:02 a.m., an expenditure of $3,299 to Skyway Strategies, otherwise known as Jaffe Communications. Later that evening, the same day the racial flyer hit, at 9:33 p.m., I received a message that was sent out via text and WhatsApp, and it was distributed by Sam Khan, president of the South Asian Community Organization, that contained a picture of the racist flyer and the following text. And this was attributed to me. Quote, "Get ready to be deported, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. If you were thinking to vote for Keith Hahn and his Board of Education team, that is exactly what his campaign thinks about Asians living in Edison, that we don't belong here. We are all immigrants and 65% property tax paid by Asian Americans in Edison. If you want to stop all of this, then vote for Mayor Lanke, Jerry Shee, Falguni Patel, Paul DiStefano for the Board of Education, Column B, Democrats, on Tuesday, November 7th. The next day, on November 2nd, the day after the racial flyer, People for Progress filed electronically at 10:49 p.m., check number 0994, which I believe was Exhibit E that you showed for Paul DiStefano. It was for $7,500 to A to Z Signs, 95 Newfield Road, Edison.
I believe Exhibit F.
Exhibit F. My apologies. A to Z Signs is a business in Raritan Center, which is owned by Duren Amin, who's the president of the Indian Business Association and also served as a member of Governor Murphy's transition team. On November 2nd, the Washington Post printed an article about the flyers in which Mayor Lanke said in an email statement, "This despicable mailer from an unidentified source contains the Trump Republican sentiments that Edison's Republican mayoral challenger and some of his supporters have chosen to embrace. This mailer appears to be an act of desperation meant to misdirect and confuse voters." Now, let me just be clear with that statement that Mayor Lanke was quoted in the Washington Press. For those of you who know Mayor Lanke, he doesn't talk to the press. That was a carefully orchestrated press release that came from the PR firm and his campaign of Jaffe Communications. In no way am I blaming Mayor Lanke for talking, and it wasn't just the Washington Post, it was the New York Times. I spent 5 days on the phone talking to every major media outlet in the country, trying to explain to them how I was not responsible for this flyer. The next day, on November 3rd, a text message and WhatsApp message was circulated by both Sam Khan and federally convicted felon Nilesh Desandi, both who were vocal supporters of Mayor Lanke and Jerry Shee's BOE Unity team. That stated, quote, "Important announcement from Keith Hahn. On November 8th will be chartered buses at Oak Tree Raid to take you straight to JFK Airport. Don't take much stuff with you since you all came empty-handed. Don't make it difficult for your journey back home is paid for by Keith Hahn for Edison Mayor, endorsed by President Trump, supported by Golden Era Adult Daycare. For more info, contact Peter Katari." On November 3rd, Mayor Lanke distributed a letter from Democratic Committeewoman Debbie Andrews, which read, quote, and this came from the committeewoman, "Since I have been the only African-American female committeewoman in Edison, Keith Hahn's behavior has caused me much anxiety and concern as I look over my shoulder and worry that a person like him is actually a police officer." Mayor Lanke also serves as the public safety director. He chose to distribute this letter in a public domain as a campaign tool, but took no official action in regards to this very disturbing statement. And when I refer to Mayor Lanke, I'm not saying I have personal knowledge that it was Mayor Lanke who distributed it, but it was somebody working for or with his campaign that put that messaging out. On November 4th, Mike.com, an online multimedia company with 19 million unique monthly users, printed in an article about the flyer, and I quote, it said this: "In a statement on Friday, incumbent Mayor Thomas Lanky blamed his Republican opponent, Keith Hahn, for the racist mailings." Now, we have the Washington Post, and that was Mike.com, but as I said earlier, it was the New York Post, it was the New York Times, it was every media outlet in the country, CNN. They were calling me for 4 days straight, and I had to explain to them that I had nothing to do with this flyer. On November 7th, Election Day, an email from peopleforprogress@gmail.com was sent to those on the Edison Board of Education email list alleging my association with known criminals. On December 11th, the BOE Unity team wrote check number 128 for $2,500 to the law firm of Genova and Burns for a retainer. Ms. Maroney had spoke about that. On December 28th, Peg Schaefer returned the phone call that I had put out to her about who she communicated with at People for Progress and who she had given the check for $7,200. Peg Schaefer responded, and this is a transcript of the voicemail that I played at one council meeting. "Hey Keith, it's Peg Schaefer calling. The only thing we were able to find out was that it was a PAC connected to the mayor of Edison. I don't know whether he's directly involved in it, but apparently it's something that he has some involvement with. So I don't know anything else, don't know any of the other players. You know, and as I said to you, it's one of our supporters who asked us to make the donation, and we were told it's for a progressive group, which is what this appears to be. So good luck on your trail. All right, thanks." And that was coming from Peg Schaefer, who is now the current vice chairwoman of the New Jersey Democratic Committee. On April 12th, Peg Schaefer's PAC writes a check number 104 to A to Z Signs, which is Dorena Min's printing company, for $1,150 and lists an outstanding obligation of $5,850 to A to Z Signs. On April 18th, less than 1 week later, Peg Schaefer's law firm, Shane Schaefer, was appointed as the new attorney to the Edison Library Board. Based on the facts I've provided, the similarities in graphic design, font, paper stock, timing, mailing list, distribution, financing, and messaging, it is apparent that the BOE Unity team, which is Jerry Shee, the Edison Democratic Organization, Sharik Ahmad, the anonymous group People for Progress, which lists Andres Morales as its treasurer, and the election fund of Thomas Lanky coordinated their campaigns and messaging through Jaffe Communications. The timing, messaging, and campaign coordination would indicate the despicable racial flyer was an inside job done by somebody within one of those 4 campaigns, with the sole purpose of increasing turnout amongst minority voters and helping the campaign of both the BOE Unity team and Mayor Lanky. As despicable as the flyer was, the politics and those responsible are even worse. Our elected officials and community leaders cannot tolerate this any longer and must condemn this in the strongest terms possible. Politics has never been an excuse to lie, and we cannot allow this to become the norm in our elections. Those responsible with this flyer, they attacked me, they attacked my family. For what? A vote? To win an election? It's disgusting. And anybody up here that does not condemn it and speak against it is guilty by association. I thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and I hope you were successful in exposing the spineless cowards responsible for this despicable flyer. Thank you.
Okay, Detective Hahn, thank you. Your perspective.
Councilman Deal, if I could just interrupt for 1 second. I will answer any questions that you, the council president, or Councilman Joshi have, but I will not participate as this hearing spirals into a political circus with the guys who are running for election this year. If we could stick to that.
That's fair.
Council President, would that be okay?
I can agree to that.
Hey, yeah, you don't have to respond to any questions.
Thank you.
If you don't like
Okay.
it.
I
And
just
no
want-
offense to you guys, but I want to stick to the facts here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming again, and your perspective is a little different, certainly a lot different, maybe, than the two previous speakers. And I understand why you would want to come tonight and state what you did. It's a long timeline that you described, which I've heard some of it over the past year and a half, but I'm sure the people in the audience or the people who may watch this somewhere, it's going to be pretty hard to follow all those pieces that you put together or have over the years. So I'm going to make this brief in the interest of time, and we have another speaker. Can you tell me who you believe is responsible for this flyer?
I believe that the Make America Great Again flyer was created, distributed, and produced by the same people responsible for People for Progress.
Okay.
I've stated that from day one.
Okay, now you said there were 4 groups in there. So you think, could you give me those groups again?
It was the BOE Unity Team, which was Jerry Shee. It was the Edison Democratic Organization, Sharik Ahmad. It was Peoples for Progress, and it was Mayor Lanky's campaign.
Okay, so out of the 4, who do you think is responsible for this? Or is it a combination of a couple of those groups?
I think throughout the course of the campaign, there were different people working on different sides and back and forth, but I believe it was some people from the BOE Unity Team, and I believe Jaffe Communications has some questions to answer too, as they did printing for all 3. People from, the one commonality that I found through my investigation was Jaffe Communications. They did printing for People for Progress, they did printing for Mayor Lanky, and they did printing for Jerry Shee and the BOE Unity Team. They're the only commonality I found. And it's also important to note with this racial flyer that the individuals responsible went to great lengths to conceal their identity. It was, them flyers were printed on an inkjet printer. They were printed on cardboard stock that's not commercial grade, and they were cut with a hand cutter, as if somebody did them in their home. Excuse me. Sorry about that.
Well, thank you, because, the other thing you said, and, I certainly appreciate you listing how long you've been a detective and how much of work you do with this. Well, one of the comments you made was, it's an inside job. So is it your belief that it is truly an inside job?
100%.
Okay. Because one of the things, when this first happened, of course, and we did not know when this first happened, where did it come from, who did it? It could be seen as much, much different. You're saying it's not what it looks like, it's something else, it's an inside job.
100%. It was done by somebody involved with one of those 4 campaigns.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Detective Hahn, first, I just want to state for the record that, I too remember the entire election. You were accused for this. In no way do I believe that you are a racist at all whatsoever. And, I don't think that you were responsible for this flyer simply because you probably more than any person I know has gone out of your way to try to get to the bottom of this. So I appreciate you putting all the facts together and also being as consistent as you've been in terms of trying to, 1, clear your name, but also get the truth out.
Thank you, Councilman.
What was the universe, to your knowledge, of who received the mailers?
From the information I have available to me, there were no Caucasian families who received that flyer. It went out only to Indians and Chinese families.
Did any of your supporters receive this flyer?
No.
Do you know supporters of either the Unity team or the other side that received this flyer?
No, actually, until this evening, that was the first time I ever actually saw a physical copy of the flyer, was when Mr. Deal, Councilman Deal, held it up tonight.
So when did you learn that these flyers were sent to both Indian and Chinese households?
Over the course of the year, over the course of the last year. I've spoke to probably 20 people who said they received it. They were all of Indian or Chinese descent. Nobody has come forward of, no Caucasians have come forward who actually received a physical flyer.
Okay. And I too believe that simply because even when I went on Facebook that day or through social media, I had only seen my personal friends or other Indian or Chinese members from the Edison community who received this. Mr. Han, or Detective Han, rather, say you were responsible for this. If someone wants to throw that at you, would you send this flyer to Indian or Chinese people? What would be the reason behind that?
Only if I was trying to lose the election.
Okay. Okay. Are you aware of any independent private investigations of this incident?
Yes, the teachers union did hire a private investigator to do some background on this.
And do you know what conclusions were made out of or were reached through that investigation?
I don't have all of the information, but what I do know is I'm going to say June of 2019, I did receive a call from an investigator from the Attorney General's office. And he asked if I could provide him with the phone number of the private investigator. His name was Joe Blaitler. I gave him Mr. Blaitler's phone number, and approximately 1 hour later, Mr. Blaitler called me and told me he had spoke to the investigator from the Attorney General's office. He said the investigator had informed him that they had positively identified somebody who purchased the stamps used to send out these racial flyers, and that individual was Sharik Ahmad.
Okay. Have you, to what extent did you discuss this with the postmaster? What else did the postmaster tell you?
I have not spoken to the postmaster. That was the investigator from the Attorney General's office had called me, and the information was relayed through the private investigator.
Okay. Council President.
And that information was reported in a NJ.com article. So that's common knowledge that it was out there.
Okay. Council President, I do not have any further questions at this time.
Just for the record, Detective Han, the date is June 2000, you said 2019? Just want to
Correct, that was this past June. Oh, I'm sorry, 2018.
Just wanted to
I'm sorry.
clarify that. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
My mistake, sorry.
No further questions? Okay.
Council President,
Yes, sir.
Detective Han,
Yes.
thank you for coming and giving the entire history, what happened, and thank you for continuing to raise the voice. And honestly, I don't believe you did anything on this one.
Thank
so
you,
I
Councilman.
truly condemn that if somebody is accusing you, this is not fair. This is not fair to you, this is not fair to your family. That's the first thing. Coming back to my one question here, do you know who would have benefited from this racist flyer?
Council President, I'm not
Mr.
gonna
Han
take
requested
questions
not
from-
to take any questions, and he's entitled not to answer.
Thank you.
Okay, do you know who sends news articles to the media that called you racist one time? Then there were multiple statements from different people, elected officials.
Mr. Han, Councilman Patil, unless Mr. Han instructs me differently, that he will answer.
Yeah, I think my previous testimony answered that as Jaffe Communications.
Thank you.
Council President. I just want to make a statement, Mr. Hahn. I think you did a great job. I haven't ever had the chance to listen to that entire testimony. I know you said you're doing a lot of homework, and I'm sorry for what happened through this campaign, through your family and all the phone calls you received and the negative publicity from it. I think you've done a wonderful job putting everything together, the timelines, explain to everybody what happened, and I appreciate you describing the correlation between everybody involved. And you put a lot of time into this. I don't think anybody would have ever done what you did, and I thank you for that, bringing it to everybody's attention here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Councilman Deal, anything else? All set? Thank you, Detective.
Thank you,
Brown,
Council
tonight.
President.
Council President, I believe the stenographer just requested a break. Okay.
Sure. We're going to take a break for a moment. 5-minute break. We are going to reconvene. Mrs. Engel? Mrs. Engel? Ma'am, if we can ask you to join us.
Sylvia Engel, 82 Winthrop Road, Edison.
If we can get you closer to the microphone, ma'am.
E-N-G-E-L. Yes, I do.
Thank you, ma'am.
I really don't have much to add to your investigation because the only information I had was people calling me and telling me, did we do that? Meaning the flyer. Because it said, make Edison great again, and of course that was synonymous with the president's theme during the campaign, make America great again. And immediately everybody thought we had something to do with it. So my comment, I didn't even know what they were talking about when I was getting calls from committee people who have friends in the Indian community and I guess the Chinese community too. And because I don't know of any committee people that actually got it. So, you know, I said, no, I don't know what you're talking about. Send it to me. So I got a few emails with it. And no, we had absolutely nothing to do with it. We wouldn't do something like that. Just, it's despicable. And that's my statement.
Okay.
So if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
I have no questions, Council President.
Okay. No question from the subcommittee. Mrs. Engel, thank you for coming out tonight. We appreciate your presence
Okay.
and taking the time to be here.
Ms. Engel, I have, just for clarification, you're the Republican chairwoman?
Yes.
And how long have you been the Republican chairwoman?
I think it was 1992 when I was first sworn in.
And how long were you, or how invested or involved were you in Keith Hahn's campaign?
I was very involved in Keith Hahn's campaign.
And who was responsible, or how did you guys, your team, the Republicans, get the walking lists, the mailing lists? Who was coordinating all of that?
Is Keith here? No, he left. He would remember the name of the consultant. We had a consultant. I can't remember the name right now. I have it home, but I would have came prepared with it. Maria, would you remember the name of the consultant we had? No, his name was Richard Castaldo, but he had a company name.
Okay.
And he handled all our literature, our mailers, and anything we put out.
Okay.
And as far as the lists of voters, I believe we got them from the new NJGOP in
Okay.
Trenton, because they have a data center.
Okay. And my last question is, this was, like I said, blamed on the Republicans initially.
Initially, yeah. Mhm.
And if the Republicans had done this, would you have mailed it to Indian and Chinese voters?
I couldn't answer, I can't answer that
Okay.
question because I just
That's
wouldn't
fine.
send out something.
That's fair. No
so-
further questions.
So ugly. All right, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next person we are calling up is Shivi Prasad.
So my legal name is Shivi Madhukar. Prasad is my middle name. So Shivi, S-H-I-V-I, M-A-D as in David, H-U-K-A-R. 9 Allison Court, Edison. Number 9 Allison Court, A-L-L-I-S-O-N. I do.
Okay.
Good. Thank you, Shivi, for coming tonight. We've heard a lot of testimony, almost 3 hours now, and we want to thank everyone for that. Shivi, what can you add to what we've heard tonight as far as information? And I'd like to ask you, how did you first hear about the flyer? What was your reaction? What did you do? Kind of take us there.
So I believe I saw the flyer the first time on Facebook, and when I saw it, I was like completely disgusted, and I was like, this is completely un-American. I immediately called, made phone calls to both Jerry and to Falguni, and that's what I remember about that day.
How did they respond, Jerry and Falguni?
So I was able to talk to Jerry in the evening, but Falguni I was talking to almost throughout the day. And she was basically very, very upset. And she was talking about, I know at one point she's called me and said, you know what, the bell rang and there are reporters at my house now. And, is this what I had, I did not sign up for this when I campaigned for the Board of Ed and things like that. And I know that then the three of them put out a statement to the press, I believe Beth, Jerry, and Falguni, like just kind of a generic statement to give out to the reporters. And I spoke to Jerry in the evening, and he was campaigning at that point.
Okay. Now, Falguni spoke to the police, correct?
I suppose so, yeah.
That was testified.
I mean, we didn't really, I didn't really talk about, I believe she's spoken to the police, yes.
Yeah, that was stated tonight. Do we know if Jerry Shee spoke to the police?
I mean, through the newspapers, I've read that he did not, but I haven't spoken to him personally, asking him if he spoke to the police or not. But in the newspaper, I read that he had not. There was some article at some point.
Okay. Did you find that odd that he wouldn't speak to the police?
I mean, I don't know what his reasons were, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. What else can you tell us about the flyer or anything you've heard about the flyer?
So my role in the campaign was, I supported this team. This was the incumbent team. And my role in this campaign was kind of limited to, I did some walking. And I know that I walked with Beth once. And then a couple of streets I walked alone. I did not walk with anybody else. And then I did attend but quite a few meet and greets, and I was kind of warming up for my own campaign next year. So that's where my role is limited to that.
Okay. Did any of your fellow board members share any information about what happened with this? Because my sense is that if something like this happened, if it was not Board of Ed, but if it was council, there would be a lot of conversation about it, especially with the scope of this thing being as large as it was national. Somebody told me it was even international. So there'd be a lot of conversation. What kind of conversations did you have with your fellow Board of Ed members?
I mean, there was a lot of talk around this issue, and I really don't remember any specifics. Okay. But generally kind of a lot of speculation, and sometimes you can even call it wishful thinking or whatever, but it's not, but as far as the flyer this particular flyer is concerned, we don't know. I hope you guys are able to get to the bottom of this, because this is really important to each and every person. of Asian heritage as well as people of Edison, and, we just have to kind of figure out, what happened here.
Good, thank you.
Shivi, good
Yeah.
evening.
Hi.
Thank you for waiting this long to come testify.
Yeah, no worries.
You said that you first saw the flyer on Facebook, correct?
Yeah.
In addition to seeing it on Facebook, did you receive it in the mail?
No.
Okay, have you ever seen a hard copy of it?
No.
Are you aware of any of your friends, neighbors, or people in the community that did receive the flyer?
I think Falguni told me that her sister received it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you said that you supported the Unity team, correct?
Yeah.
Were you made part of any of their campaign strategy meetings?
Not at all.
So,
And that meeting that Paul was talking about, I remember that we had met at the Dunkin' Donuts on Talmadge Road, and I believe I was not at the event that he was at. I was actually, I think it was an ETEA event at Pines Manor, and Shannon and I went from Pines Manor to Dunkin' Donuts, and I think Jerry and Paul came from somewhere else. And so we just had it was pretty late, and we had a cup of coffee, and then I just went home after that. So I don't know what happened after that. I wasn't part of any of that.
so I believe the testimony from Paul DiStefano was that there was a meeting at the Edison Diner, maybe?
No, Paul said that there was a meeting at the expo. That's what I heard him say.
But after the
as far as as far as I remember, I don't think it was. I was not at expo because we were at the Talmadge Road Dunkin' Donuts, and that's pretty far away from expo. And it's because I was at Pines Manor, that's where we met after that.
Are you aware of the individual or individuals responsible for the creation or design of this flyer?
No.
Are you aware of the identity of the individual or individuals responsible for the printing of this flyer?
No.
Can you
One more thing that I remember, that Falguni had told me that this picture was taken from her Facebook page. And so I went to her Facebook and I looked at all the pictures and I said, but I can't see that picture. And she said that, it's a group picture and whoever pulled this picture cropped it. So that's something else I remember. So just cropped it to just focus on her face, but this was actually a group picture. She had told me that.
And do you know anything with regard to her account settings, whether they were set to private, whether there was only a certain...
I'm not aware of that, yeah.
Do you know the individual or individuals responsible for the distribution of the flyer?
No.
And you received the invitation to come to this meeting approximately 3 weeks ago?
I received it actually, I think the letter is dated, I got it 1 week after the rest of the people got it because I actually found out that I have to come here through a newspaper article, and I sent a message to Sam and I asked him, am I supposed to show up because I haven't received a letter? And he told me that you will receive a letter on Monday. So I think I received it last Monday, whereas the other people received it 2 Mondays ago.
Okay. From the time that you received the letter last Monday to today, has anybody contacted you with regard to your testimony tonight?
The only elected officials that I have spoken to regarding the flyer are Falguni Patel and Beth Maroney.
And that was in the last week that you spoke with them about this?
I spoke to them ever since they got the letter. So that's why I knew that the letter was out.
Okay. Thank you. I have nothing further.
What was the response?
About what?
The letter coming?
Whose response? Falguni's.
Anyone that you had spoken to, any elected official or not?
I mean, I only spoke to Falguni and I spoke to Beth Maroney about the flyer. I mean, there were a couple of people who contacted me, but I did not talk to them. But the only people I talked to about the flyer were Falguni and Beth. And Falguni was like, I'm okay to come and give a statement, but I want to do it after June 4th, after the primaries happen. And Beth was like, I am absolutely going to come and speak at this place. And I was like, kind of, why have they called me? Because, all of you guys know that, I'm really not connected to any of this. And so I said, but I'll go because, I'll just voluntarily go because, I have been invited for this, so I'll just go.
Anything else from the committee?
Council President.
Yes, sir.
Chief, I just want to thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Council President, I guess Shivi's finished? Okay, thank you, Shiv.
Shivi, thank you very much for coming
Thank
out
you.
tonight.
Where we are at this time is that I believe we invited 10 people tonight to be interviewed. We truly want to thank the 5 that did. There was a lot of testimony, a lot of information. Thank you very much. Question, though. The other 5 that aren't here, their names came up throughout the evening, and in fairness to all of them, I do think it's important that they come and tell their side of the story. So now I know that Ms. Maroney stated that she was advised by the Board of Education lawyer, or a lawyer for the Board of Education, that she or no one else should testify. And I want to get to that in a second. Did we hear from Sharik Ahmad? Did we hear from him at all, as whether he's coming or he's not coming? His name came up. Do we know?
No, we have not heard a response.
Okay, because the question now is, this is very, very important. My initial thought was, sure, everybody would come and share all the information. It's something we all want to get to the bottom of. At least that's what a lot of people say. We want to get to the bottom of it. If you want to get to the bottom of it, come here and help us get to the bottom of it. So I'm not sure how we're going to proceed with some of the folks. Now, we are going to send out more invitations. There's more. I know when the subcommittee first got together, there was 20 to 30 people that we believed had information with this. So there's plenty of people. So Sharik Ahmad, we certainly need to find out. And again, this is in fairness to Sharik and fairness to Joshi and Falguni and everybody else involved. I think it's really important to hear from them. And I know as a committee, a subcommittee, and I probably speak for the whole council, we want to give them every opportunity we can for them to come here, to be fair, so we understand this better. One thing I'm not really understanding, though, and maybe our counselors can help us out with this, why would the Board of Education lawyer tell the members of the Board of Education not to come for a racist flyer investigation, that it really has nothing to do with the current Board of Education or any business that they're doing?
I can only speculate as to that exactly.
Councilman, I think you brought up an excellent point that needs to be noted, especially by the press. I think it is absolutely stupid. It's nonsense. It's irresponsible. It's reckless, because taxpayer dollars are being used to taxpayer dollars from the Board of Education right now are being used to supposedly defend the Board of Education members on an issue that is absolutely not related to the Board of Education at all whatsoever. There's no reason why an attorney from the Board of Education would direct, first of all, any attorney works for your client. It's never the other way around. The Board of Ed attorney should not be directing anyone. And the Board of Education members, all of them, if they choose to come at a later time, that's one thing. And I can respect that. I can understand that. As you said, Falguni wanted to do that. But what is absolutely ridiculous is for taxpayer dollars to be used, to defend or allegedly defend Board of Education members on this case. Two totally separate issues, absolutely ridiculous.
And there's another point that was brought up tonight, too. Unless we find out differently, the Board of Education never took any type of formal vote It wasn't a resolution to retain this lawyer to give that advice.
I agree, Councilman Deal, and I want to thank Beth Maroney for doing what's right and testifying despite this directive or recommendation. And I plan on finding out whether the taxpayers of Edison are footing the bill for this supposed representation.
Council President.
Go ahead, Mr. Coyle.
Council President, I did have a conversation with Sheriff Mugg, and he mentioned he will be participating. It's Ramadan this week, and he gave a short statement here, but in short of it, it just basically says his timing of his notice didn't qualify for him to be here on time, and it is Ramadan for him, but he did mention to me he would appear. So if the timing, I'm quite certain we can convince him to come. I have a statement he wrote to read, if you want to read it, Councilman.
Yeah, my only question is, a couple of minutes ago, I just asked the question, where's Shaq? Does anybody know anything about it? So,
I was
thank you.
letting you finish. I'm sorry.
Thank you, sir.
I wasn't being rude. I just,
Thank you.
I'm
Go
not
ahead.
here to,
Yeah.
what's coming out, but.
Yeah, go ahead.
Was this the same statement
yeah,
that
do
was
you-
passed on to the attorneys, or?
Yeah, do you want to, do you want to read it, Ms. Gomez?
Council President?
Yes, sir.
I prefer that Mr. Ahmad appear and give a statement as opposed to reading a written statement. And it's a little strange that he had the time to write out a statement and provide it to Councilman Coyle, yet he didn't have the time to make a telephone call to either Mr. Dressel or Mr. Malik Schmidt and advise them as to the reasons why he couldn't make it tonight.
Okay. Do we have anything else to add from the council?
Council President, I'm not here to stick up for his point. He claims that a letter was written as attorney. Is that true or false?
A letter was written,
A letter was written by his attorney.
I've received no letter from him or his attorney at this time. But that doesn't mean he didn't write it, I just haven't
Okay.
received.
He sent a copy of the letter to me. I can give it to you. I mean, I don't see it being a problem, him appearing, but I'm just passing the message given to me.
Thank you, sir. Okay, if we have nothing else, I want to remind everybody that we will be holding our second meeting on Thursday, May 23rd, here for the continuation of the Committee of the Whole. So again, it's going to be here on Council Chambers, Thursday, May 23rd at 7 p.m. Yep. We need a motion to reconvene as this meeting will stay open.
Motion to reconvene.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming tonight.